EX 6.10 impact of provincial announcement on city 2019 budget and 2020 budget process. Oh, I missed out. Check 1, 2, 3, 4. We are standing by for audio confirmation from media, audio operator, WebEx, YouTube. Check 1. Matt, you're not? Check 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just going to read EX 6.1. Keysight updates. Supplementary materials were posted on June 5th, 2019. EX 6.2. Report back on Bill 66, Restoring Ontario's Competitiveness Act, 2019 City Impacts. A revised report, May 29th, 2019, from the city manager was posted on May 31st, 2019. A revision was made to the comments section on page 3. EX 6.3, Schedule 9, Changes to the Labor Relations Act, 1995, Restoring Ontario's Competitiveness. I think I read that one already. EX 6.
Check, check, 1, 2, 2. But it doesn't go back into the house. Oh, you use that? Okay. No, that's cool, that's cool. You just keep it muted for them.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think we have a quorum of the Executive Committee here. In fact, I'm sure we do. And so on that note, I will declare that we have quorum and call the 6th meeting of the Executive Committee to order. And I want to welcome all the members of the committee, the members of North York Community Council, other members of City Council, and of course to members of the public and the media. And to acknowledge, as is obvious, we're here in North York is something that I committed to try to do, which is to have Executive Committee meetings in different parts of the city. We've had one in Scarborough, and we're pleased to be here in North York and keep moving this around the city. I think it's a healthy thing to do in many different respects, but I appreciate the fact that for those for whom it might have been a bit more convenient to be at City Hall, you've come here today, and I think it's a positive thing that we all did come here today, and we'll continue to do that. May we all acknowledge that the land that we're meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. And we also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the New Credit. May I also just acknowledge today as being, we just had a lovely ceremony downtown in front of the old City Hall, is the 75th anniversary of D-Day, and I think these are things that are very worthy of being reminded of, and today is that very day, and I think it's just worthy of a further acknowledgement here at this one of our meetings of civic democracy, the importance of that day 75 years ago today. People can watch us on YouTube at Toronto City Council Live, or follow the meeting on computer, tablet, or smartphone at www.toronto.ca/council. As is customary at the beginning of these meetings, may I ask if there are any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, and if there is any such interest to be declared, please indicate the item number and the nature of the interest. Are there any members of the committee wishing to declare any interest? Seeing none, we'll move forward. May I have a motion to confirm the minutes of the Executive Committee meeting held on May the 1st, 2019? Moved by Councillor Ainsley. Call the question. All those in favour? Opposed? Carried. We have 2 items of new business to add to the agenda. They're before you on pink paper. May I please have a motion to add the first item of new business? Let me just grab it here myself. I have the one from Councillor Deputy Mayor Wong, and here's the other one. There we go. There is an item headed up, not fair in the air, excessive air traffic noise over Don Mills, to be added by Deputy Mayor Wong. So all those in favour? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And then there's the second item of new business from Deputy Mayor Thompson concerning the Van Horn Outdoor Community Enhancement Program. Motion to add that to the moved by Councillor Deputy Mayor Thompson. All those in favour? Opposed? Carried. I would also like to move the following motion in light of the fact we have a very substantial number of people registered to speak today, and I think that in the interest of making sure everybody has a fair chance, and that we expect others will frankly register before 10:30, and if the clerk can put up, there it is there, a motion which is to place a limit of 3 minutes on speaking times for everybody involved, including deputants and also members of the committee, and question time as well, and also to close the registration for deputations at 10:30 this morning. So that motion is on the screens behind us, and I've moved that, and I will call the question. All those in favour? Opposed? Carried. So, members of the public, since the speakers list will be closed at 10:30 this morning, about an hour from now, if you wish to speak to an item that's on today's agenda and haven't yet registered, please register with the City Clerk's office staff at the front table as soon as possible. Now, for those who are registered to speak, we'll follow just a slightly different process just because of the different configuration of the room. And what I will do is I'll announce 3 names at a time. And when it is your turn to speak, we would ask that you take a seat here. We're right in front of the committee where we would have the deputation, but we'll ask the next 2 people if they'll take some seats that are just held vacant over there behind the podium. And you can choose to speak either here or at the podium, I suppose, as you wish. It's entirely up to you. Some people may want to use the overhead that is there, but I would ask that, and in fact we are asking that people do stand at the podium. I think that's better for the television pickup for that. So if 3 people would come as I call the names, the 2 people will sit there, and 1 will make the deputation, and then we can proceed from there. So on that note, we'll proceed with the rundown of the agenda. We have 26 items on the agenda today, and so as we go through, if I can only just find that, here we are. All right. Item EX 6.1, the Keysight update, is being held for deputations. Item EX 6.2, and I think the clerk has advised me we probably can deal with these as separate matters, because they are in fact listed as separate matters. It was being held for deputations, but unless a committee member wants to hold it, the deputant who was registered realized they were on the wrong item and has actually moved to 6.3, so there are no deputations on 6.2. So we could move by Councillor Crawford. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried to accept the recommendations there. Item 6.3 is being held for deputations. Item 6.4, Federal Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund
Hold.
update. There is a motion
Hold.
that's being held by Councillor Nunziata. Okay, thank you. Item 6.5, Status Update, Toronto, Ontario Transit Responsibilities Realignment Review is being held for deputations. Item 6, EX 6.6, Report back on MM 7.2, Effective Collaboration with Ontario Municipalities. All right, there is a motion, I understand, to defer that indefinitely. Is that coming from myself? I'm sorry about that. I didn't have a copy of that, but there's a motion from me. So I'm told by the clerk. That's why you have these magnificent city staff clerks, to defer that indefinitely. So I'll put that on the table. All those in favor? No? All right. Do you wish? Do we have questions, or do we?
Yeah, can I hold it for questions?
All right. No problem at all. Item 6.7, City Powers to Regulate Firearms and Ammunition, and update on related initiatives. There are no deputations, so and the report is really involving us reiterating a number of requests we've made to the Government of Canada with regard to strengthened gun controls and so on. Moved by Councillor Nunziata. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 6.8, Toronto Atmospheric Fund Board request to amend board composition. And there's a motion on that from, I believe, Councillor Bailão. Is that right? Councillor Bailão? Deputy Mayor Bailão? Do you have a motion on the Atmospheric Fund Board request?
Yes, I do.
All right.
I'd like to move that and
If there are no other questions or comments or speeches wishing to be made, you could put your motion on the table. We can dispose of it.
I would like that.
All right. Can people see the?
It's just on
So
the
it's
composition of the TAP.
Yeah, it's just an amendment to add a public member
public
from
member.
outside the City of Toronto to coincide with their actual activities. If there's no other discussion, if people are content, we can proceed to vote on the motion, the amendment here that's on the screen. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And the motion the item as amended. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, thank you very much. Item 6.9, the 1627 and 1675 Danforth Avenue, Danforth Garage Master Plan final reports.
Hold, please.
I have, and that's being held by Councillor Ainsley. Thank you. Item 6.10, EX 6.10, Impact of Provincial Announcement on City's 2019 Budget and 2020 Budget Process is being held for deputations. Item EX 6.11, City of Toronto's Corporate Asset Management Policy. The recommendations are in front of us, coming from the City Manager and Chief Financial Officer to adopt this policy. Can I have a motion to move the staff recommendations? Moved by Councillor Ainsley. Any questions or comments? Otherwise, we'll proceed to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 6.12, EX 6.12, the 2019 Heads and Beds Levy on Institutions. Councillor Ainsley has a motion, which is one that I think you've had from past years, in which I solidly concur.
I think I'm wishing myself happy 10th anniversary, because I think this is the 10th year I've moved
frustrating,
this, and I'm hoping this government will listen to
Are we
it.
putting it up on the screen? Are we
Yes.
doing that now? Maybe this year somebody will listen, but we'll see. We'll see. Any questions or comments? Otherwise, we can just deal with the amending motion and then the main item. All those in favor of the motion to amend? Opposed? Carried. And then the item is amended. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Carry that up there now with the full concurrence of your executive committee colleagues and soon to be city council, I'm sure. Item 6.13, enforcing the residency requirement for City of Toronto public appointees. This is just to receive. You have a motion on that motion. Okay. Do you have that, Julie? Okay. So this is an item to refer this back to the city clerk for further report to the executive committee in September. I'll call the question on that. All those in favor of the motion to refer back? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item EX 6.14, Arena Boards of Management 2017 Operating Surpluses Deficits Settlement. Again, there's a recommendation coming from the Budget Committee. Are you moving that, Councillor Crawford? Thank you. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 6.15, Association of Community Centres Settlement of Operating Results for the year ended 2017. Again, there are recommendations forthcoming from the Budget Committee, moved by Councillor Crawford, the Chair of the Budget Committee. Are there any questions, discussions? Otherwise, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item EX 6.16, Facilities 2019 Capital Budget and 2020 to 2028 Capital Plan Adjustments and Accelerations Deferrals for the second quarter. Again, recommendation
I'd like to
coming.
hold that. Hold.
Pardon me. That's
Hold.
being held by Councillor
Councillor
Ainsley.
Ainsley.
Thank you. Item EX 6.17, Toronto Fire Services Amendment to the 2019 Approved Capital Budget and 20 to 22 Cash Flow Station B, Downsview. There's a letter with recommendations from the Budget Committee, moved by Councillor Crawford. Any discussion or holds? All right. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item EX 6.18, the Information and Technology 2018 Year-End Capital Budget and 2019 to 2028 Capital Plan Adjustments and Accelerations Deferrals. Again, recommendations coming from the Budget Committee, moved by Councillor Crawford. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item EX 6.19, Project Cost Adjustments and Deferrals Accelerations to the Parks, Forestry and Recreation 2019 Capital Budget and 2020 to 2028 Capital Plan, second quarter. Again, recommendations coming from the Budget Committee, moved by Councillor Crawford. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item EX 6.20, Create TO 2018 Financial Results and Annual Report. This is coming from the board, and there's a recommendation from them that we receive for information the 2018 report and approve the audited financial statements that are attached to the report. May I have a motion to accept the the Create TO recommendations? Moved by Deputy Mayor Barlow. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item CEX 6.21, amendments to the procedures bylaw for the Board of Directors of TO Live to allow remote participation. There's a letter coming from the Board of Directors of TO Live, and Councillor Crawford, as a member of the board, will move that. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item EX 6.22, TO Live Finance and Administration Policies. Again, a letter coming from the Board of Directors of TO Live recommending that City Council approve records retention policy coming from the Vice President and Finance and Administration of TO Live. Moved again by Councillor Crawford. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And finally, a third item from TO Live called the Programming TO Live 6.23 TO Live Programming Reserve Fund. Again, a letter from the board recommending the establishment of the Programming Reserve Fund. Moved by Councillor Crawford.
Yeah, just Mr. Mayor, I just want to mention to some of the members that it's very exciting. What they're actually going to be doing with the program is, with the fund, is great. We'd have to actually go in camera to discuss that, but in absence of that, I can discuss it with any of the members if they want to know the program that we're actually going to be using the money for. It's actually quite exciting. But again, I don't think we have to go into camera for it, but if any of the members want to know about it, I will discuss it with them.
All right, so we have a choice of either waiting to go on camera at some point in time or just having Councillor Crawford's offer of discussing it with the council
I'm
committee.
comfortable moving it on behalf of the board.
Councillor Crawford's moving this on behalf of the board. If there are no discussions or questions, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. That's EX 6.23. Pardon me. And finally, other than our two items of new business, we added EX, well, actually, I guess both of those probably have to be spoken to. Item EX 6.24, the bylaw to govern Toronto Transit Commission board meeting proceedings update, a letter coming from the TTC board recommending that we approve the amendments to their bylaw, which are by and large housekeeping amendments. Is there a member of the commission that wants to move that recommendation coming from the Deputy Mayor? Sure. Deputy Mayor Min and Wong. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And we're going to, people are going to want to speak to the two items, I assume, of new business. We'll hold those down for, no, not necessarily. All right, well then let's deal first with the first, I think the first one came from, which becomes, I guess, item 6.25 is the one from Deputy Mayor Min and Wong. Is there any need to speak to that other than to deal with the recommendation that's here? Okay, so it really deals with the question of a report coming from the city manager about noise levels from airplanes. And if there is no wish to speak or ask questions about that, I can simply move the recommendation put forward by Deputy Mayor Min and Wong and call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And then we have the second item, which is item 6.26, moved by Deputy Mayor Michael Thompson. and it is simply referring the proposal that's attached to the item to the city manager for processing in accordance with City Council's unsolicited quotations or proposals policy. And I presume there probably aren't any questions about that. And seeing none, I will ask then that we call the question on the recommendation. All those in favor, opposed, carry. Okay. So that brings us back to the beginning then, to the first item of the day, item 6.1, Keysight update. And there's a report in front of us from the Deputy City Manager, Infrastructure and Development Services, and we have thus far 20 deputants to be heard on this. So we'll start with, I'll name the first three. And the first three are Brian Kelsey, Toronto Region Board of Trade, Bianca Wiley, Tech Reset Canada, and Jim Balsillie, Council of Canadian Innovators. So if they would take these seats up front here. And Brian Kelsey doesn't need to sit down. Brian can come straight to the podium when he's ready to do so. And with a reminder that we're going to ask that people use, actually, I misspoke myself, Brian, to use the podium just because it's easier for the television. And the other two can sit. That's Jim that's there. Jim, just take those seats that are right there in the front row for the deputies. Brian, if I can figure out how to start the clock here, you have 3 minutes, and I'm sure there'll be some questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the Executive Committee. Today, the Executive is considering how to proceed to consultations and to a decision if Waterfront Toronto recommends proceeding to a final deal with Sidewalk Labs. However, there will be speakers coming after me who will be speaking to another question, and that is they'll be arguing that you should not be proceeding with this consultation at all. On behalf of the board, I want to make a couple of statements specific to that point. And that is first, the Board of Trade welcomes Sidewalk Labs here. We're glad they're here. We're glad to see a foreign firm, as so many others have, investing here in Toronto. But it's important to note that not everybody in the business community supports that. The reason we want you to proceed with consultations, you'll hear from other business leaders who will say that not every business believes that Sidewalk Labs should be welcome here for various reasons. All the more reason for you to proceed with consultations, to hear both sides, because we know there's a diverse range of opinion in the business community on this issue, and we want councillors to hear that before proceeding. On the second point, the Toronto Region Board of Trade, as many of you will know, in January released a report called Bibliotech, calling attention to the data regulation issues around so-called public realm data, what Sidewalk Labs as a company refers to as urban data. We support the regulation of that data. We introduced that report as our first step into that debate because we wanted to make it clear, not only that we believe that that issue should be regulated, but we believe that with proactive work by this council and other governments, which is already taking place, we believe that data can be regulated in time for Sidewalk Labs to proceed. And even if the Sidewalk Labs deal fails, there are still other examples in this city already underway where public realm data is either being collected or could be collected, or firms are aspiring to collect it for which there's no regulation. So let's resolve that issue as quickly as we can. Last but not least, the Toronto Region Board of Trade has pulled on this issue twice. I want to be clear that we haven't pulled to short circuit the critics. Those polls show that there's broad, if loose, support for sidewalk proceeding and a small core, growing but nevertheless small, of opposition to this deal. We released those polls not to short circuit the critics, but to help council make the decision you as an executive need to make today, and that is to short circuit those who want to short circuit a full process in the first place. There's enough public support out there to allow council to proceed with a full and robust debate. Let's judge what Sidewalk Labs is going to do and what they may or may not bring to our community based on what they actually propose in the MIDP, as opposed to what their critics are speculating that they might propose in their MIDP based on their worst fears or best arguments. Thank you.
3 minutes and 2 seconds. Well done. Good leadership at the beginning, Mr. Kelsey. Are there some questions of this deputy? All right. Well, thank you very much for. I'm sorry. There's one from Councillor Thompson, Deputy Mayor Thompson. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the Speaker. I just wanted to make sure that I'm understanding your comment with respect to the Board of Trades. You're suggesting that we should not prejudge this particular matter. We should allow evidence and that evidence should really guide our decision-making. Is that what you're suggesting?
Crazy as it is, yes, but I could even go further than that. You as councillors know that part of this deal is essentially a development deal, a development proposal. You know as well as anyone in this room, and I think better than some of the critics of this deal do, that developments don't happen in this city without modifications, without multiple proposals, without consultation with the community to test whether whether a particular configuration on a land site will be more popular or less popular with constituents and with councillors to deal with the massive regulations you've got in development. To me, to others who are watching this process, this is just replicating this. That Sidewalk Labs has obviously gone through a lot of time to revise their ideas, and good for them, because there's obviously been a lot of public feedback and criticism of what might happen. Judge them based on their final application, not based on theories of what their application would be. You're required in law to do that once you see a final development application. This is no different, despite the added complexity of the other business model issues that they intend to bring to the table.
So you're saying, through you, Mr. Mayor, it would be prudent for us at least to understand what it is that we would be approving and or not approving, because at this particular point in time, it's a lot of conceptual possibilities.
Sure.
There's a lot of ambiguities in addition to that.
Well, and sorry, Councillor, I'd encourage everybody on council to actually read the RFP if you haven't already, and I know you've got a lot of materials to read every day, but we have. And bidders for that process, and Sidewalk as the successful bidder, they've been asked to, specifically in the RFP, propose a range of complex ideas. Transit is specifically in there. Tell us how you're going to help get transit onto the waterfront. A range of possible ideas on utilities. That's right there in the RFP. And so the reason it's taken some time to comply with those requests is because you've got multiple layers of issues there. And so, of course, it's prudent, doubly so, since Sidewalk has an agreement with Waterfront to proceed. If the public benefit from the Sidewalk deal isn't sufficient in Waterfront's mind or in your mind, of course it's your right to say no, but actually figure out what it is before you rush to a judgment, as some in the audience would ask you to do.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Deputy Mayor Thompson. Are there others wishing to ask questions of this deputant? Deputy Mayor Barlow?
Sorry to short-circuit the process.
In your opinion, do we have everything we need to make that assessment? What do we, as a city, need to make sure that we have in order to make that right assessment, so we have the information to make the right choice?
Two comments on that, Councillor, and that is first, of course, we read with interest Ms. Cook's report in terms of suggesting that you may need more resources, you may need to consult more experts to deal in particular with the data piece. And I could think of 5 or 6 different ways that cities in similar situations have come to that. And one of those ways might be to work with the federal and provincial governments, which are obviously co-shareholders in Waterfront and are going to be considering the same issues, to see about drawing on their resources and their analysis, even if City Council may make a separate decision or look at that analysis through a different lens. I do think you do need some expertise and some outside comment beyond what you'll hear in the consultations that are proposed to get a picture on how that would work. And we'll be there front and center saying that we'd rather see regulation of the public realm data issue than enough time allowed for the independent data hub to exist in lieu of that regulation. On the other piece, though, of course, you need the proposal. And we've been tracking this issue closely. And it's mind-boggling some days to watch the company on the one hand say they have no intention of proposing X, and then critics say on the other hand that of course they must be proposing Y. And ultimately, this is a case where we've had a lot of litigation of this issue on something that's supposed to be rumored to be a 1,000-page document. You can't judge what the proposal is unless you get that. And this is a classic, highly complex public-private partnership in terms of the bid, and that the expectation that was asked of the bidders when they come in is that they outline multiple business models, multiple proposals that are dealing in multiple areas of regulation. And so until you see which areas they're actually in and actually out of in terms of those pieces and how they're confronting them, it's all theory.
Your completed your questions? Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Fletcher, did you have a question?
Thank you very much. Thank you. The RFP, since you've opened that up, it was for an innovation and funding partner for...
Innovation development partner, yes.
Well, it says innovation and funding partner, which, would you agree that those are a little different?
I would agree that either phrasing captures a lot of pages of complex RFP. The funding piece, of course, refers to, I believe, the fact that the winning bidder is expected to be investing dollars in developing the plan for this, which we know Sidewalk Labs is clearly doing.
And I guess I'm asking you that because clearly we're both reading the RFP, and I want to make sure we're reading the same pages. That on page 11, there's just a chart that shows the phases of the RFP, with the Waterfront Toronto, of course, being there the whole time.
Right.
And then an innovation and funding partner brought in at the close of the RFP.
Sure.
And then another RFP that would be a future process for infrastructure design and delivery.
Sure.
And then finally, another little section, real estate development partners, which would be a separate RFP. So we're talking the same language when you're talking
Absolutely.
about what the scope of the project is. So design, infrastructure design, development, real estate development, all those, in your opinion, would be considered in an RFP once this plan comes in, and Sidewalk would say, here's all the innovations, here's all the things that we're bringing forward for discussion. Is that how you understand that? Like I do?
Yes, Councillor, thank you for making that point, because one of the most common points of discussion I have with people in the community on this issue is that there are some who've argued that Sidewalk will win or has already won development rights to everything in the Portlands. And of course, as I believe you may be arguing, that's not true. That's not true in the RFP. It's not true because of the land configuration of how Waterfront owns the Keysight site, but doesn't own the other land that's within their Portland's jurisdiction. And so even if Sidewalk runs the gauntlet, as we've called it, of approvals here, approvals at Waterfront, of approvals from the other two shareholders, just on the principles of the MIDP, you then have other gauntlets that are triggered. There's a long regulatory process ahead of Sidewalk to even get a building in the ground, let alone get access to the land that's outside the Keysight site.
They'd have to get an RFP and win that in order to build something.
Indeed, and they also have to, we've said at every step, echoing Councillor Cressy's points on this issue, I expect that they'll need the same development approvals that every other developer needs in this city, because that's the law.
But they might not be the developer. I guess that's because it's an RFP.
Indeed.
Nobody has the front position for much of this.
Final.
Understanding what is in the MIDP and understanding what approvals and other further RFPs for any part of the project. Do you feel we're clear on that, or we should be a little clearer?
I think it can be clear, and let me just give you one sentence and say that part of the challenge with this is that Waterfront's original RFP was trying to get multiple sets, literally innovative ideas from one bidder or one bid consortium at the beginning stage of this, and then export that from the Keysight site to improve how the Portlands was developed.
Yes.
That's where a lot of this complexity comes from. I might not have done it that way, but that's where we are.
But that is the RFP.
Councillor,
Indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Other questions of Mr. Kelsey? All right, thanks very much for your patience in answering questions and for your submission. We have next Bianca Wiley from Tech Reset Canada, to be followed by Jim Balsley and Charisse Burda from the City Building Institute, Ryerson University. So if they could be standing by. And Ms. Wiley, good morning, welcome, and you have 3 minutes.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about this report. We as Tech Reset Canada have 2 items we'd like to talk about. Both our items are informed by the need to balance innovation investments in energy with similar investments in resident protection and democracy. The 2 items I'm going to touch on are the timetable for the assessment of this plan and some additional criteria to consider in its assessment, possibly, should this plan even get to you. I'm actually going to take a different tack than Mr. Kelsey, and I'm going to zoom way out and suggest this is not complex at all. This is quite simple. There's a very simple thing happening here, and it has a lot to do with power and an asymmetry of power. So I'm going to talk about this in very basic terms. Firstly, though, a question. On page 7, which speaks to the Waterfront Toronto and Sidewalk Labs relationship, This section does not indicate that the planned development agreement between Waterfront Toronto and Sidewalk Labs, which again, the city is not party to, expires on September 30th of this year. Given the timeline milestones in this report, I'm wondering why this doesn't appear as one in the report. Do staff assume that the Waterfront Toronto Board and Sidewalk Labs will extend their agreement? And if so, why? I think it's critical that the off-ramps for this deal are clearly understood by the public. The structure of this deal has been highly unclear. Some people think Sidewalk Toronto is Waterfront Toronto, when it's Sidewalk Labs. This has created a particularly bad situation for accountability. So based on my understanding, on or by September 30th, one or both parties might walk away from this deal. And if they want to extend this deal, there has to be a vote from Waterfront Toronto's board. No such vote is currently scheduled. So if someone from staff could speak to that question, that would be really helpful. The second thing is around the criteria. On page 13, you've got some criteria listed. I was wondering if, regarding alignment with good governance and best practices, if you might add something related to the global or spillover impacts of this deal. We think about the environment this way, right? Cities think about each other, and they think about the impacts that their activities have on other cities around the world. We should think about our digital infrastructure this way, too. What happens in Toronto is not intended to stay in Toronto. It's quite the opposite, actually. That could be good and bad. Given the global nature of the internet and digital infrastructure, as well as precedent and impact, the city bears moral responsibility for the dominoes it could set in motion with this deal, including how it shares in potential revenues of this deal and the ethics of that. Nowhere in the criteria is there an explicit mention related to how to assess Sidewalk Labs as an irrational actor, because they are part of an under-regulated monopoly. I'm not talking about Sidewalk Labs, I'm not talking about Google, I'm talking about monopoly power. That's something that stands independent of the firm. It's a problem, independent of the names of the companies. Sidewalk Labs can bleed money in Toronto and make it back elsewhere. That's part of the plan. We here have a responsibility to stop problematic business models that stem from an entrenched and under-regulated monopoly. We have a responsibility to think of cities beyond this one. This includes using our public land and public infrastructure in such a deal, which includes both physical and digital infrastructure.
And I'll ask you on that note to conclude, if you could.
Sure thing.
Thank you.
The internet is not in good shape right now. We need time and space to build out something better in our physical spaces and our city. We can do that together if we have the time to do so. So I welcome your leadership to do that.
Thank you very much for your submission. Are there questions of the deputant? Okay, well, thank you very much for your deputation. Jim Balsley is next, Council of Canadian Innovators, to be followed by Cherise Burda and Julie Beddoes. If Ms. Beddoes would come and take a seat in the front row. Mr. Balsley, welcome.
Thank you.
You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of the Executive Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. My name is Jim Balsley. I'm the retired chairman and co-CEO of Research in Motion. I'm also the co-founder of the Council of Canadian Innovators and the Institute of New Economic Thinking, and chairman of Sustainable Development Technologies Canada. I'm here because I think it's important you hear from representatives of the business community who understand the economy of intellectual property and data. Smart cities, which rely on IP and data to make sensors viable and functioning, are a $1.3 trillion industry annually, growing at 16% per year. They represent an enormous economic opportunity for Canadians to develop new technologies and create inclusive prosperity. Sidewalk Toronto is not a smart city. I know this project was foisted onto everyone by the Prime Minister's office, and I appreciate that you were put in a difficult position. Let's instead put Toronto on the right track by designing strategies that govern technologically driven spaces for the benefit of citizens. Barcelona offers a lesson in municipal leadership that understands how to use technology to create more democratic, prosperous, inclusive, and open cities. Montreal did the thoughtful and necessary smart city work up front by 1, asserting authority over matters that belong firmly in the hands of public officials, 2, creating a guidance framework for IoT, 3, creating an open source policy, 4, creating a 5G policy study, and 5, creating a progressive procurement strategy. When referring to Sidewalk, Montreal smart city leaders say, for us, Toronto is the example not to follow. Both cities spent 5 years getting their strategies right before moving towards selecting vendors. I welcome your recently passed motion to develop a citywide policy framework and governance model associated with digital infrastructure. But I caution, this exercise takes 3 to 5 years to get it right, if your goal is to protect Torontonian civil and digital rights. Finally, during last week's 14-country International Grand Committee on Big Data, Privacy, and Democracy, the meeting in Ottawa, Professor Harvard Emerita Shoshana Zuboff testified, and I quote, "If Canada gives Toronto to Google Alphabet, a blow will be struck against the future possibilities of democratic societies in the 21st century." End of quote. I urge you to do the deep thinking on the central theme of 21st century governance, the economic, social, political, and ethical implications of a network city. I hope you will choose not to go down in history as officials who struck the deadly blow to the future of Canada and democracies everywhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well done. Right on the dot of 3 minutes. That's even better than the first one at 3 minutes and 2 seconds. Are there questions of the deputant? We'll start with Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you very much. You'd probably know this, and I've heard this before. Are there rules around collecting data about children or from a certain age group that you know about?
Currently, we do not have the governance framework established, but they have established those in other cities and other jurisdictions around the world. And we have to be careful to protect the interests of our most vulnerable citizens. So those rules have not been established yet. And in various jurisdictions around the world, these social media companies have been found to exploit vulnerable and suicidal youth to sell them products to capitalize on their vulnerabilities. So we do not have the governance established on this yet, no.
What is that governance in other countries? At what age do you say you can't, you can't drink till you're a certain age? At what age can't you harvest that information?
They're very both on the permissions allowed, the control of the individual, the ages that they involve, but they have a responsible and extensive dialogue on these things. It's very important to understand that data is the most potent force in the world at play right now, and it is absolutely essential to get these governance frameworks up front, certainly for our most vulnerable in society, but also for the protection of democracy and many other forces that data crosscuts and hijacks.
So what you're really saying is within this funding and innovation, and data being one of the results of the innovation, that we need to be extremely careful on governance to make sure nothing goes wrong and we're not putting citizens in a position that we shouldn't be putting them in.
Yes, put the socks on before your shoes.
Put the socks on. And there was, you mentioned the motion that Councillor Ainsley and Councillor Cressy had made, but when this item first came before executive, it was on January 24th, 2018, and I'm wondering if you are familiar with some of those motions that were made there, because at that point the executive committee itself looked at investigating the feasibility of establishing a democratically representative residents advisory group with fiduciary responsibility to look after residents' digital interests with the following goals. And then there's a number of goals that sound a lot like what you're talking about. Were you familiar with this before I read that?
I'm not aware of that, but I will say this realm is deeply technical. These are the most sophisticated and predatory companies in the world. I absolutely assure you, they know what they're doing. They know the side doors. I did this game for decades. I know how it's played. And they look to prey on vulnerability and those that they can use certain kinds of words that it seems benign and benevolent, but in fact, it's highly predatory. And as you can see, when you talk about innovation and benefits of that, the Department of Justice in the US has just begun an investigation against them for anti-competitive behavior. So I assure you that sensibility will get applied in Toronto.
Thanks, Councillor Fletcher. And I head to Councillor Ainsley next.
Thank you, through Mayor Tory. Thanks for coming in this morning. So I'm just like some clarification. So you're saying the process that we should be undertaking should take between 3 and 5 years?
It should have been done up front before a vendor was selected, even before an RFP was initiated. Absolutely. This was the cart before the horse. And now you have to start it by framing between citizens and their elected officials just what you want this multifaceted and highly consequential set of forces to be. And this consultation should not be managed by a vendor, let alone setting an RFP, let alone selecting a vendor. So
Okay.
all you're doing is working on creating compensatory strategies for something that was ill started.
Okay, so even when we look at doing like the smart city policy framework in the midst of all of this, this is something we should have had done well
Years ago.
before we were even
Yeah.
looking at somebody like Sidewalk Labs.
Deeply irresponsible to be engaged with a vendor on an implementation prior to laying out the framework of which the citizens and their elected officials have decided how to do this. I cannot stress enough how multidimensional and how consequential this is. This will be the most important decision you make of your political careers because it sets the digital nervous system for generations to come.
Okay.
This is a deeply consequential decision, far more than I think people realized 2 years ago. And I understand that the bloom has come off the flower here. And people realize this is way more consequential than they realized. Evidence what happened in Brexit, evidence what's happened in the Trump election, and many other forces are at play right now.
Right. And so I've read or heard or talked to people, there's two streams of thought. It's one is we should walk away from this. It's a bad deal right at this point. And the other one is, you can walk away. Nobody's going to come after Sidewalk Labs. The other one is, walk away. There's lots of opportunity. We just had the collision conference here a couple of weeks ago. There's lots of opportunity if we don't proceed with this.
You have 12 of the most successful smart city companies in the world in Toronto. None of them were consulted on this. I would encourage you to meet with them, and your worship, they would like to meet with you to explain how, and they range from sales from 10 million to 2 billion in Toronto, how deeply undermining this will be for their future growth. But most importantly is you must understand what it is that you want to achieve between you and the citizens before you get this process going. And the objective of the vendor is to hijack the distillation and the processing so that they can move right towards conclusions before citizens and their government have decided just what they want.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Tory.
Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the Speaker. I gather from your comment, Mr. Basili, tremendous amount of caution and asking us to be extremely careful based on what we have here.
I would say know what you're doing first and involve experts. And I know from Waterfront Toronto, there were no experts in IP and data when they made the original decision. I know from the people from the Prime Minister's office, they told me they have no IP or data experts in this. So I would say it's kind of like having surgery for a loved one. Make sure they have medical training before they go in there.
Right. And I appreciate that comment. So given the position in terms of where we are today, and given your role with respect to the Council of Canadian Innovators, given the fact that this is now out in the public domain for commentary and so on, and yes, I realize that there are bodies who are going to make decision on this, Waterfront Secretariat and Board, and the city in itself, what role then will you and the industry players who have great knowledge, what role do you think you can play in helping us to ensure, as you've indicated, that essentially the cart is in front of the horse? How do we actually scale that back and allow this process to unfold to arrive at the decision-making opportunity?
Councillor, that's an excellent question. I did business in over 150 countries around the world and scaled more commercialization of ideas than any other Canadian. And I've seen how business happens around the world. I don't understand why we don't involve our domestic innovators and our domestic companies when we make these decisions, and have trade agencies think that these should be done by foreign companies, which brings all the wealth back to their countries. This country and this city needs prosperity. We need wealth. You have a lot of things that you're short on funds for, and these companies, I assure you, if you ask them to meet tomorrow, I would get 2/3 of the CEOs changing their schedules to come meet with you and be part of a dialogue between our political leaders, between our citizens, and between the technical and economic experts that can not only talk about the prosperity they can generate for you, but also translate the words and the obfuscation that's used is so that you can chart a future for this city that will be prosperous and good for citizens. They would welcome working with you in a minute.
So, Mr. Basili, I'm going to give you my business card with my cell number because as economic development, I think this is extremely important. In fact, I just had a discussion a couple of days ago, not with, I don't know if you know this person, but with someone around this very issue, around this very subject matter. So we need your help to help us going forward. But you are not today, though, saying that we should not proceed. Is that correct?
I am not. I'm saying understand the framework before you proceed. And do not proceed with a specific proposal from a specific vendor. So I'm not saying don't proceed with a smart city, but don't proceed with a vendor proposed project this time. Absolutely not. That's shoes before socks. But absolutely you should be proceeding with this process of figuring out smart city and digital governance, which is a multi-year exercise. And I will say, smart cities, the global clean tech market is $2.5 trillion. Smart cities is $1.3 trillion. If we want to migrate from a carbon-based economy to a sustainable economy, these companies have to grow here in Toronto. You need them to be successful, or we will be impoverished, or we will be carbon heavy. It's the only path forward is to grow these companies.
All right. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. Councillor Pasternak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm getting the impression from your comments that there's been almost no consultation or outreach. I'm on page 9 of the report before us, and it's saying Waterfront Toronto and Sidewalk Labs have conducted a series of public and stakeholder consultation meetings to present and gain feedback on work in progress. And it goes on to say Waterfront Toronto has convened a stakeholder advisory committee that continues to provide input on the project. Are those comments incorrect or inaccurate?
Well, be careful, because much of the consultation was run by the vendor. And you have to understand, in the technology industry, value chains are used, not supply chains. And value chains are very predatory and unstable, where one company tries to take all. So you can't really have a consultation with somebody who wants to blow you out, and you've given them control of the economic keys. And so how you structure the engagement will determine who gets the $1 trillion opportunity. My view is that I think it would be better to have a few $1 billion in Toronto to pay for Toronto, not to avail it so easily to foreign jurisdictions like Silicon Valley. So when you say this consultation, it's an easy word to say, but it's not that simple to do with an integrity when you're involving these kinds of forces. And I think you're seeing that in all of these investigations around the world and election hijacking in multiple committees.
Okay, thank you. I got the point. Are you aware that when a developer comes and does a public consultation, mostly a statutory consultation across the city, whether it be homes or condos or what have you, much of that presentation and much of that event is run by the applicant?
Yeah, but
that's our system.
Yeah, but the thing is you have a system established prior before you bring them in. You have no system for the digital layer and the smart city at this time. So they apply into a system. You've actually brought in a vendor to design the system. And that's what I meant by saying you put the shoes on before the socks. You combined a development project from a digital nervous system at the same time, and that was the original flaw.
Do you think that historically when something innovative, creative, imaginative comes to Toronto, it brings out a whole bunch of people who are killjoys and want to stop it because they can't handle change?
I know few people who embrace change more than I do and have prospered on that in my life. And I tell you, if you met these smart city CEOs, some of whom do $2 billion a year in Toronto, these are not people averse to change. They are averse to harm to their business and to their citizens in the city they love.
Thanks, Councillor Pasternak. I just have a couple of questions if there. I don't see anybody else who wants to ask any. Mr. Rousley, first of all, I should make a comment and say, to my knowledge, these 12 people, I'm sure I know many of them, but the 12 people have never asked to meet with me, and if they want to ask through you to meet with me, I'd be more than happy to see them. Perhaps we could even do the same meeting with Councillor Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Love it.
But they've never asked for a meeting, so if they want to have one,
meeting.
great. I was going to ask you a different question, but I think having heard all this discussion, my question would be this. Would I hear you saying exactly the same things regardless of who, what do you call it, the
Vendor.
Vendor. So if it was, ABC Limited, if it was, you'd be saying the same thing, which is that
100%.
you're putting your shoes on here before you have your socks on.
100%.
Okay. Because the other question I wanted to ask you is, you would agree that as of the moment, there is no proposal that has been formally submitted or otherwise put out there. The report we have in front of us speaks to a process to receive through Waterfront Corporation and consider through us and them and the other governments involved a proposal from a person that has been.
But you have no framework to receive that.
No,
proposal.
but I'm just saying you agree there is no proposal at the moment. There
Correct.
isn't one. And I was going to ask you, and I will anyway, whether you think it's fair to kind of rule something out before the proposal's even submitted. But I think you've made a different point this morning.
I think it's unfair to the councillors and the citizens to have a dialogue on a project prior to having a framework, because all it does is make everyone vulnerable to steamrolling democracy and hijacking processes, because you haven't set your framework in front. So it actually induces a tremendous amount of vulnerability. However, once you do complete your smart city governance framework, like Montreal and Barcelona and most European cities have done that, then you welcome into these proposals. So I think you're bringing in a tremendous amount of risk and shunting aside the urgent process of the pre-work if you indulge this kind of exercise, which I think if people could do it all over again, I think they would have put the socks on first. And so I'm simply strongly encouraging you not to compound a situation, but really get yourself back onto the right footing and take charge of it. I actually think you'll thrive because of the forces that I've talked about of innovators and democratic interest and strong political leaders. I actually think you have the recipe to do this exceptionally well and vault us forward, fantastically.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't see anybody else asking any questions, so I'll thank you very much for your answers and for your deputation.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I have one housekeeping matter to look after. Unfortunately, we had overlooked there was one deputant registered on item 6.24, which is the TTC procedural bylaw, and so I would ask that the executive committee, or I will move that the executive committee reconsider item EX 6.24, and we'll come to the deputation at the appropriate time. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. All right, going back to our deputation list. We have as the next three, Cherise Burda from the Ryerson City Building Institute, Julie Beddoes, and Cynthia Wilkie from Waterfront for All. So Ms. Burda is next, and then we have the other two hopefully standing by. Ms. Burda, welcome. 3 minutes are yours.
Great. Good morning. I appreciate the opportunity to emphasize some urban sustainability goals and outcomes to consider when evaluating Sidewalks plan. First, as the city's resilience strategy recognizes, climate change is the urgent issue of our time. Reducing carbon emissions should be the leading objective on how we plan our cities. Sidewalks' goal is to design a carbon-positive neighborhood with innovations to tackle emissions, especially from transportation and buildings, which are our two largest sources. There's nowhere else in our city, public or private, where this is happening. It is imperative that we develop and replicate successful models. Second, we're not moving as fast as we could with Vision Zero or changing how streets are designed, which is the most important way we can save lives. Sidewalk Lab's plan for street design, public realm, and mobility prioritizes people, placemaking, and safety over driving. Third, Sidewalk Labs is creating innovations to address affordable housing, innovations in financing, mass timber, and factory manufacturing to bring down the cost of housing. This plan and these innovations could be tested and scaled, and we can learn from them and encourage them elsewhere. Next, it's critical that we build the right transit and active transit infrastructure before development occurs on the eastern waterfront, or we risk locking in auto-oriented streets and parking like we did in Liberty Village. This is why we should be interested in Sidewalks' ideas for financing the hugely important waterfront LRT. At a time when the province is stripping revenue tools from the city, we need some solutions to achieve good city building. So when it comes to concerns about data security in our city, it's easy to point the finger at Sidewalk Labs because it's a physical place and a face. But If Sidewalk Labs were to leave Toronto, issues of data security and privacy in our city would not go away. These issues are not confined to a single geography on the waterfront. Data collection and monetization is pervasive. When anyone turns on their phone location, buys something online, connects with a network, or walks near surveillance cameras, sensors are nesting in our urban fabric, and I agree with Mr. Balsillie that smart cities is a challenge and it needs to be addressed. But just like Sidewalk Labs could be a test site for climate-positive, innovative city building, it too could be a test site for data security, privacy, regulation, and public oversight of urban data. If we strive to get this right and continually evaluate it and improve it, it might actually help us address the bigger issues of smart cities and data security and privacy citywide and beyond. So in closing, we have the opportunity to learn from this master plan. I think we should be open to it and and look how it can help to creatively address major issues in our city that we face now and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Berger. Are there questions of the deputant? Seeing none, I'll thank you very much for being with us this morning. Next, Julie Beddoes, Cynthia Wilkie, and then after that, Melissa Goldstein, Parkdale Neighborhood Land Trust. Ms. Beddoes, welcome, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you for coming.
Mr. Mayor and Councillors, thank you for the chance to speak. I've been a community rep in waterfront development for 20 years, and I salute Waterfront Toronto. They've built wonderful things, and there are more wonderful things to come. You have a proposal for evaluating the MIDP of, I'm having to hurry and ad-lib a bit because my time is cut short, so forgive me if I stumble. Google and its sibling companies are now so discredited, and the problems with Sidewalk's proposal so widely criticized, you may never have to evaluate them. I think Waterfront Toronto will be sensible enough to say no. But if it ever does come about that you have to evaluate the MIDP, I have some suggestions for ways that you can strengthen the criteria that the staff report offers you. First of all, I'd tell you that you will get 1,000 pages of pretty pictures of healthy-looking people wandering through idyllic streetscapes. That is a smokescreen. It's just a diversion to prevent you from looking at the real, deeper issues. And there's been nothing in the proposal that the city and Waterfront Toronto together couldn't build if we decide to. The report gives you 7 criteria on which to base your evaluation of the MIDP. I hope you will add an 8th to enable you to rigorously examine A, what Sidewalk seeks to gain from the project, how it hopes to recoup any costs it incurs or financing it underwrites, especially if this involves hijacking the city's tax or development charges, revenues. B, whether any land, infrastructure, utilities, services, or programs currently operated or owned by public agencies would be transferred to private ones. C, whether public spaces, roads, parks, etc., would be conveyed to the city when built, as has been the case in Waterfront Toronto development so far, or would become POPs, privately owned, publicly accessible spaces. Will I be able to carry a placard saying Google sucks through Keysight? Under criteria A, B, and C, alignment with city plans and policies, good government, and best practices, I hope you will look in the MIDP for justification of why development of this site is being handled in ways so different from procedures for the rest of East Bayfront or the West Don Lands or the Portlands. In those cases, there were public consultations before any requests for qualifications or requests for proposals were issued. In the international competitions for the design of the Central Waterfront and the Portlands, there was extensive public input before the winners were chosen. Applicants were told what the community wished to see on its land and were evaluated on how well they could make it happen. They were not asked to tell us what they were prepared to do to suit their own interests.
I'll have to ask you to just conclude on a couple of seconds if you can.
Keysight is publicly owned land, and what happens on it must be in the best interest of the citizens of Toronto, not of shareholders in a multinational corporation. The waterfront belongs to us and must stay that way.
Thank you very much, Ms. Beddoes. Are there questions of the deputy? Councillor Fletcher?
Yes, you've noted you've been involved for many, many years on all of the waterfront issues, including West Don Lands, East Bayfront. Do you think that, and I was interested in what Mr. Balzilli said about framing the data and the importance of data right at the moment as a commodity. Do you feel that prior to the RFP or prior to this process on these 12 acres, that got enough texture, that was something that the public was asked about before that was launched?
I would say that what I'm saying about prior consultation is exactly parallel to what Mr. Balzilli is saying. We have worked with Waterfront Toronto and the city. The city has official plans. My first knowledge of Portland's development was developing the Part 2 city plan called Unlocking the Waterfront, 23 years ago? But the city has an official plan, and with Waterfront Toronto, we've developed individual precinct plans so that when proposals come forth, there's a framework to evaluate them. We have no framework other than the city's regulations, basic planning regulations, in which to evaluate sidewalks proposals. As real estate developers, in the same way as Mr. Balzilli said, we have no framework to evaluate the data issues, which are stupefying. We should have had, as we had, for instance, when East Bayfront was developed, Waterfront Toronto held huge public meetings. Hundreds of people arrived. And we had a blank map, and we were asked to put on the map what we wished to see there, what the community wanted to see on its waterfront. Nobody asked us whether we wanted a foreign corporation to come and build whatever it chose to build on a bit of our waterfront.
Just looking at the RFP, I don't get the impression that that's what was in the RFP. And the page 11, where that was for a funding and innovation partner, which everyone's clear, here's how we would fund things, here's the innovations we're interested in pursuing, particularly around climate. But the others, the delivery, the design and development, are very clearly part of a different RFP. Do you think those lines appear to have been blurred at the moment, in the public's mind anyway?
I think Sidewalk's taking a lot for granted that we'll fall for it. It'll show us pretty pictures of fancy paving stones, and they think that we'll buy it. I don't think Toronto is that naive.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Fletcher. Any other questions of the deputy? I just have one based on something you just said a minute ago. Do I understand? Would you rule out any foreign corporation coming here to be part of something we might put on the waterfront or anywhere else in the city? Or because you made a reference to a foreign corporation coming in here.
No, I mean the waterfront development has gone through in partnership with many corporations, Tridel, Heinz, etc. However, when there have been that kind of deal, we've always known exactly what the deal with. When Heinz and Tridel took over building on East Bayfront, it was perfectly obvious what the deal was, what their job was, how they would make money, what their relationship with Waterfront Toronto was. There was absolutely no mystery. Here, I have asked my good friends at Waterfront Toronto over and over again, what is the deal you're making with Sidewalk? Are they real estate developers? Are they a research institution? What are they? And they simply don't know. I'm sure Sidewalk knows, but I don't think Waterfront Toronto or Council or the public know.
But so to be clear, your issues with the transparency and knowing what the deal is and so on, but you don't, if it happened to be, and you knew all the deals and all, it was very transparent with a foreign corporation, you don't have any problem with foreign corporations coming to Toronto to do business?
No, my concern is that we, by not understanding this deal better, we may be at risk of allowing our public services and programs to be privatized, and that's a thin end of a really unpleasant wedge. I was invited at the beginning of the process to be on one of the advisory boards to the Sidewalk Enterprise, and it was to be the Community Benefits Committee. And in the list of issues to discuss, at the top of the list was public health. Well, the city is the agency that looks after public health, not a private corporation. So I wrote a letter to the head of Waterfront Toronto asking for reassurance that my concerns about privatization of services, of utilities, etc., were not justified, and my letter simply wasn't answered. And I've asked senior staff at Waterfront Toronto many times for the answers, and I've never received them.
Thank you very much, Ms. Beddoes. We'll now move to Cynthia Wilkie, Waterfront for All, and then just to give the next two, Melissa Goldstein, I previously mentioned Parkdale Neighborhood Land Trust, and Ken Greenberg, Greenberg Consultants. So those are the next three, and Ms. Wilkie is next. And thank you and welcome, and 3 minutes are yours.
Okay, thank you. I'm here as the Vice Chair of Waterfront for All, a citizens group dedicated to preserving, enhancing, and celebrating the entire Toronto waterfront from Etobicoke Creek to the Rouge River as a unique natural and cultural resource for all of us to enjoy. Our work is guided by the City Central Waterfront Plan and by the work of the Crombie Commission, which aspires to a waterfront that is green, clean, usable, diverse, open, accessible, connected, affordable, and attractive. Many of our members and supporters have been actively engaged in the Keysight project development through the joint Waterfront Toronto Sidewalk Labs engagement process of roundtables, public meetings, and working groups, through interaction directly with Sidewalk Labs, through participation in Waterfront Toronto advisory and stakeholder groups. I'm here today on behalf of Waterfront for All to support the staff recommendation and urge their adoption by this committee. We are in the middle of a global climate change crisis that threatens the future of all forms of life on the planet. We are also in the midst of a global housing affordability crisis that is an immediate threat to the quality of life in our city. Business as usual in city building is not good enough. We urgently need to find a way to do cities differently. Through Keysight, Waterfront Toronto continues to lead in urban innovation strategies. This is not a simple real estate deal. Sidewalk Labs partnership is intended to demonstrate innovations in sustainability and social equity that go far beyond what any player in the private sector can be expected to address. Will the Keysight partnership deliver on a suite of strategies that can help us as a city approach climate-positive net zero development? Will Keysight demonstrate strategies to improve affordability and social equity? Will the partnership offer the kind of economic development benefits contemplated in the RFP and project development agreement? We don't know until the MIDP is released and analyzed. But based on our engagement to date, we are cautiously optimistic and anxious to participate in the evaluation of the Sidewalk Labs proposal. Critics from the digital justice sector have raised very important concerns about the lack of a digital governance and privacy framework to manage digital innovations in the 21st century city. These are concerns that apply as much to the rest of the city as they do to the Quayside neighborhood. Fortunately, strong advocacy on the part of this sector has made Keysight the catalyst that has been urgently needed to initiate municipal, provincial, and federal action on digital governance. We are pleased to see that in the staff report, a significant portion of the budget will be devoted to developing a citywide digital governance framework. Already, this is a positive effect of the Keysight project and long overdue. I'll close by urging the city to adopt the staff recommendations and provide the resources for the city to fully assess and advise us on what we hope will be a transformative project for Toronto. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there questions of the deputy? Councillor Fletcher.
Yes, you very clearly described the innovation plan and the funding and innovation RFP that said, let's figure out something great to do here on these 12 acres. I hear that you're concerned about making sure we get the data part right, and that is now a discussion in the city. I do want to ask you about the RFP again. From that innovation, from my reading of the RFP, and you've been involved in all of the advisory groups, that would come in as here's all of the innovative ideas, and then it would go out for design and development that isn't included in this RFP? Or do you understand that?
I think I understand it differently, Council.
Do you? How do you understand
So
it?
I didn't come prepared to go line by line through this, but my understanding is that Sidewalk Labs has been invited to develop a development plan, including a business plan, in which they may participate in fully or partially, and we don't know what the plan is exactly. Although we have some ideas that they've got some robust ideas about how they might participate.
Would that be in the project development agreement that would be outlined, do you think? Because I haven't found that specifically.
I'd be happy to go away, look at it, and then advise you about precisely where that would lie, but so I don't think I can do that right at the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Are there other questions of the deputy? Okay, hearing none, thank you very much, Ms. Wiley, for your deputation and for your answers to the questions. And that brings us to Melissa Goldstein, Parkdale Neighbourhood Land Trust, and the next two after that are Ken Greenberg, Greenberg Consultants, and Max Dean, if they can be ready. And Ms. Goldstein, good morning, and thank you for coming, and you have 3 minutes.
Good morning, Mayor and Councillors. I want to begin today by focusing on the staff report in front of you and asking for clarification about the purpose of the city's evaluation of the MIDP. We can't have democratic decision-making unless the public understands both who has the authority to make which decisions and how those decisions will be made. The staff report makes it sound like there are not one but two big decisions that the city may have the authority to make: whether or not to pursue the MIDP in whole or in part, and whether or not to pursue implementing the MIDP in whole or in part with Sidewalk Labs. In the staff report, it assumes that if Waterfront Toronto chooses to pursue the MIDP in whole or in part, that Sidewalk Labs will be implementing the plan or the parts, and that's a huge mistake. It's critically important that the MIDP be considered separately from the company that produced the plan. Waterfront Toronto can choose to stop working with Sidewalk Labs once the MIDP has been submitted, and so can the City of Toronto. As a company with no development experience, a problematic track record, and that is months and months late delivering the plan that it is hoping to win, it will win a massive public contract, Sidewalk Labs is probably not the best partner to implement any plan, never mind one of this scale or importance. And so it's highly inappropriate for this evaluation plan from city staff to treat the MIDP like the evaluation of a sole source contract. The plan needs to be evaluated on its own merits and deficiencies and weighed against other options. Sidewalk Labs also needs to be evaluated on their merits and deficiencies. And what makes that challenging is that we have no other proposals to compare the MIDP to at this point, and no other potential project partners identified. Should we just trust Sidewalk Labs, a company with no development experience whatsoever, to have come up with the best affordable housing plan possible for Keysight and the Portlands? Or do we solicit other competitive proposals to ensure we actually get the best outcome? On Tuesday, Tom Armstrong from the Co-op Housing Federation of BC was in Toronto talking about the innovative approach they've developed out west that maximizes the affordable housing potential of public land. We're talking about thousands of units of permanently affordable housing where affordability is tied to area median incomes instead of average market rent. Everyone was really inspired, excited, and eager to get started. And this is the kind of innovation that Torontonians really need. Toronto has an affordable housing crisis at the same time as it has 100,000 empty homes that aren't on the rental market. This BC model doesn't produce empty homes, it only produces housing that people will actually live in, and a lot of it. But how does an innovative idea like this get an opportunity for consideration? After investing billions of our tax dollars in flood protecting and remediating the Portlands, an area the size of downtown Toronto, I don't want Toronto to miss amazing opportunities like this to use our incredibly valuable resources and assets to build a whole lot of housing that people will actually live in and be able to afford to live in, because it didn't ask what's possible and chose instead to assume that the same model we've been pursuing for a while of building empty homes for investors and a bit of not very affordable housing is the best that can be done, because it isn't. The evaluation plan also says that staff would review the degree to which the MIDP proposal includes benefits for the community, including those who may be impacted by related growth. But potential for community benefits needs to be evaluated alongside the potential for community harms. What we've seen in California is that those impacted by related growth have been forced into homelessness. The San Francisco Bay Area now has 28,200 people experiencing homelessness thanks to the arrival of big tech.
I could ask you to conclude shortly. Thank you.
That's 21,000 more homeless people than Toronto has. If Google was good at affordable housing, there wouldn't be 21,000 homeless people in the Bay Area. Where Google's expertise lies is in contributing to housing crises. The MIDP warrants a full impact assessment, environmental impact, social impact, economic impact, to evaluate its potential harms and potential benefits.
All right, I'll have to stop you there. Thank you. Are there questions of the deputant? All right, I'll thank you very much for your submissions. Thank you. Okay, the next three then: Ken Greenberg, Greenberg Consultants, Max Dean, and Janice Fuser.
Good morning, Mayor Tory, members of the committee. You have a written submission, which was the 5-minute version, so I'm going to try and race through this as best I can in the time allotted. I want to speak to how the sidewalk project could make a vital contribution to the next phase of Toronto's evolution. In the interest of full disclosure, I've been involved with sidewalk since 2015 when I was invited to join a group of international urbanists and people from the tech world to look at how these things could be combined to deal with the major challenges facing cities in our time. The advances in technology inevitably play a critical role in the evolution of cities. How they are absorbed and what impacts they have are open questions. The key issue for me comes down to how a human-centered urbanism could be aided by technology and not subverted by it. Why is this worth the risk for Toronto at this point and potentially so beneficial? We're in the throes of an amazing growth spurt. Our existing systems are strained. Established ways of doing basic things are stretched to the limit and beyond. We need breakthroughs in places to experiment and innovate, but as we know, change is very hard. Regulatory structures and operating mechanisms that may have served us well in the past as useful bulwarks against making mistakes have now become, in many cases, impediments. We have an urgent need to test them against new realities, issues of polarization, of climate readiness, changes in mobility, and we have to introduce a creative tension between what is and what could be to ask the what-if questions in fundamental ways. The Sidewalk Partnership may just provide the catalyst, R&D resources, and the time and space we urgently need at this time to help us make those innovations. What sets this project apart, in my mind, from other smart city efforts that are going on around the world is, in fact, how the focus here is on human experience and a healthy dose of skepticism about technology, which may surprise you. This isn't Silicon Valley trying to make a city, but rather urbanists who understand the joy and complexity of urban experience, looking to advance great planning and design using technology selectively and where beneficial. While nothing has been determined, there are a whole range of things that can be explored, and I spell this out in more detail in the written submission, but a new level of mixed use in the city, providing housing to many people who are currently finding it inaccessible, a greater range of mobility options, alternative means of collecting and dealing with waste, weather mitigation techniques, new ways of building buildings with wood composite modular technologies.
I'll have to ask you to conclude, Mr. Greenberg.
Okay, just one more sentence. These and many other ideas are not technological gimmicks. They go to the heart of how we will live together in the city. By being combined and interrelated in a testbed area, their cumulative impact can be vastly greater than scattered throughout the city.
And I do thank you for the fact you gave us a written version because it helps us to have that as part of the permanent record. Are there questions of Mr. Greenberg this morning? Again, thank you very much for being here.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, there was. Sorry, I didn't see that, Councillor Fletcher. Go ahead.
Yes, I understand the excitement about doing things differently, and you have indicated that you had the honor to work on this project and talk to many people prior to it coming to fruition. The issue of data is become extremely large, and the light that has been shone on the issue of data, who owns it, how it's used, even this question about the age at which you can start taking data. But was that part of the earlier conversations, or is that just now emerged as one of the big issues here?
Councillor Fletcher, this was part of the conversations going back to 2015, long before Toronto was ever considered. And It is, this is something that's happening around the world in all cities as the use of data is penetrating pretty much everything we do. All of us are involved in this, like it or not. And I think the really key opportunity, or one of the key opportunities with Sidewalk in Toronto, is to actually have a serious, open discussion about the appropriate use of technology. I've spent much of my career dealing with what we did with the internal combustion engine, being completely uncritical about how we adopted a previous technology. I think this is a great opportunity to think deeply about how, when, and where, and when not, we will use technology in our cities.
And you'd agree that that's not for Sidewalk Labs to tell us how to use the technology. That's for us to determine a platform, very thoughtful, taking into consideration all of the global information we have from other cities. So this notion that we may be the cart before the horse, do you accept that at all?
I 100%. That is a public responsibility. I think cities, again, many cities around the world are playing catch-up, trying to put their arms around this. I think at this point, once the MIDP is submitted, it goes to Waterfront Toronto and the city to actually take a hard look at those issues and to create the rules and the protocols by which data will be handled. That should not be up to Sidewalk under any circumstances.
It does appear that might take longer than, it may take longer, given the advice we've had here. Could take a number of years to come up with that framework.
You know, I think we're seized with it today as we're sitting here. I don't think we can wait to try and create a perfect framework. I think we're dealing with this daily. It is involved in pretty much everything we are doing in our city today, sidewalk or no. I think if there were no sidewalk, we would still have the same issue to deal with.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Fletcher. Any other questions of Mr. Greenberg? Thanks very much again for being here. Appreciate it. Max Dean is next, Janice Fuser, and Nick DiCarlo. Those are the next three. So, Mr. Dean, thank you for coming, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Max Dean. I'm a visual artist. I'm also the 2014 recipient of the Governor General's Award for Excellence in the Visual Arts. But more importantly, I'm also, or next year, will represent my 25th year of working and living in the Portlands. So I think I share the rare and distinct position of being the only person in the room that actually probably works in the Portlands. And so as a visual artist, what I'm really involved in is I'm very much involved in leaps of faith and learning how to trust one's intuition and learning how to and embrace risk. And I think that what's interesting about the Sidewalk Labs, and I would like to speak not so much about what they're proposing, but what they've done to date, right, like that. And I think that there's a kind of rare and exceptional kind of quality to this group of people that have come up, you know, with a presentation at 307 Lakeshore, which is conceptually tight. It's enormously imaginative about the way that they've approached and dealt with us as individuals and as a city. And so I think that we have to realize that this is a group of people that are actually listening to us, right, which is a rare and kind of unique kind of situation because they've responded to us with great understanding, they've responded to us with imagination, and more importantly, they're dealing with us with compassion. And so I think what's truly unique about this group, and I would ask you to entertain their proposal in the near future, is that they've actually left their egos at the door. They're here for us, they're listening to us, and I think that they should be listened to, and we should entertain their kind of proposal with great kind of seriousness. And so I would hope that they would move, that we could all move this forward in a kind of productive and imaginative way, not only for just the community of Toronto, but for the citizens of the city. Thank you. I think I win that one at 2 minutes, 10 seconds.
Mr. Dean, you most certainly do. So far today, you're running first in the standings for economy of time, and we appreciate that. Are there questions of Mr. Dean? All right, we won't, but thank you very much for your submission. Appreciate that very much. So Janice Fuser, Nick DiCarlo, and Sahar Raza are the next three.
Good morning. Thank you for letting me speak, Mayor and Councillors, staff. I have written submissions, so I'm just going to touch on a couple of points from there. And to start by pointing to the report and saying that the report helpfully, if alarmingly, describes a number of ways in which this company's scope, role, and its geographic sphere of influence could grow over time. And staff has made an important contribution here in pushing us to think of plans like the coming MIDP as vectors, areas in which this tech giant's footprint and influence in our city could grow and change. And I'll just flag a few that are in the report. In the summary, the growth of a sphere of influence, the growth of a geographic scope into West Villiers Island. A transformation, also in the summary, of the traditional role of developer to a quasi-governmental role, and here's a quote, further, the MIDP may propose roles for Sidewalk Labs in advising Waterfront Toronto on deploying technology and in financing infrastructure beyond the Keysight site. I urge city staff and councillors, Waterfront Toronto, and members of the public to keep pushing for more clarity about how this project proposes to change city governance, the public sphere, public sector work. This project has prompted an important discussion in our community about how we can build inclusive and sustainable communities and ensure development works for everyone, particularly given the unique opportunities posed by public lands. And so these often obscure details are critical for us to stand the possible trade-offs for undertaking work with this particular proponent, one of the richest, most sophisticated tech companies in the world, in this manner as both applicant and evaluator, as others have made the case. And finally, to end on the point for the need for transparency and information, I think other people have commented that Sidewalk Labs doesn't have a long track record as a city planner or developer, but cities have had some experience with Google real estate deals. And many of these deals are marked by the pursuit of tax incentives and the use of non-disclosure agreements, preventing public awareness of the nature or even existence of these deals. And I've just referenced a couple of those cases in the written comments. In Toronto, we need to know, so to speak, if there are things we don't know, whether there have been NDAs requested or employed in the city, and knowing that there may be, should we possibly develop policies restricting or preventing their use here. I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much for your comments. Are there questions of the deputy? I see none, and I thank you very much for being with us. Nick DiCarlo, Sahar Raza, and John Wilson from the West Don Lands Committee. Those are the next three. And Mr. DiCarlo, welcome, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm retired for 7 years and have not been active due to various family commitments. But this issue has brought me out of my non-participation activity, which my whole history has been one of being an activist. And the reasons why I put a written submission in, and I'll briefly address that, and I want to address some of the questions that have been raised. First of all, it seems to me that there are three issues that we're giving up by following this proposal. One is public control over development. And what we do know now is that whatever the proposal is, it will involve massive surveillance at the street level, interior to buildings and throughout the whole area of the development of the city. The assumption is that this is a good thing. However, I think what it really means is that those who control that information then can control how advertising is done. They have the advantage over any other competitor in terms of how business develops, and businesses will be forced to cooperate with them in order to be part of that system. So it gives up control to a monopoly, and it gives up the control of the city to be able to develop some of these things and make their own decisions. The relationship between the city and the citizen is reversed, because now what happens is that the city is an area where mostly it's private land, but the access to public space is the key to what makes a city function. And what now the use of surveillance controlled by a private company, what that means is that you're now, in order to participate in public space, you now have to enter into the private realm. And that is a real problem in terms of how the city can function. It's a real challenge to the nature of cities, and it's a real reversal of what the role of citizens play in the city. and giving that up. And finally, the right for the individual to choose is threatened. And now I know that if the example for me is I now use Google Maps on my phone. I used to be able to use Google Maps. I didn't have to give my location. Now it won't function unless I tell Google where I am. I know that I cannot access a number of websites unless I allow cookies on my phone and my computer, and I can be tracked. If I don't allow that, I cannot access those websites. I can't get information. I've read research that clearly documents that, for example, the children's toys record what children do that are smart toys. I've read research that documents that Google and others follow what people do, turn on cameras on their phones, etc. These are serious, credible researches. This is not what I want. This is not what gives me individual choice. 3 issues very quickly I'll address.
I don't think you'll have time to address 3, so
I'm going to try.
Pick one. Well, no,
okay, one. Environmental crisis.
You're at 3 minutes. So.
Yeah, but partly that was answering your question. And the environmental crisis, yes, there's an environmental crisis, but there are other crises as well. And the key to developing the environmental crisis is addressing democracy. Regulation. It's not going to be possible you can only regulate after the data is collected. If it's collected privately, they already have the information. It's too late to regulate. And finally, why say no now? Because it's a failed model. We can't go down this road, and at best we'll be wasting time. At worst, we'll give up control of our future.
All right. Stop you there. Thank you very much. Just to see if there are some questions for you. I see no questions, so I will thank you for your deputation very much. Sahar Raza, John Wilson, and Mike York are the next 3. So Sahar Raza next. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sahar Raza, and I am here today as a resident and an academic from the GTA. For the past 18 months, I've been studying the Sidewalk Labs project with great anxiety because while I do believe that technology has the potential for promoting public good, vast evidence suggests that inviting Google's sister company to redesign our city from the internet up will not lead to socially just outcomes, especially because we lack policies to protect the public from tech corporations. We have already seen tech giants undercut democracy, accountability, and transparency, for example, in the Facebook and Cambridge Analytica scandal, in the fact that Amazon paid no federal taxes on its $11.2 billion of profits in 2018, and in Google's use of secret algorithms and NDAs to protect its content sorting logics from public scrutiny. And Sidewalk Labs itself has publicly stated that it wanted limited regulation to experiment with its technologies in what they call the testbed of Keysight. So instead of allowing Google to freely exploit our public lands, services, and data for profit, Toronto has the opportunity to do something very unique right now. We can set precedent for how the rest of the world pursues technological urban innovation by creating a governance structure that protects our democracy and ensures accountability and transparency among tech corporations. As the Block Sidewalk campaign argues, Waterfront Toronto's partnership with Sidewalk Labs is fundamentally undemocratic because it was made without prior consultation with the public. Going forward with this project will set a dangerous precedent for Canada and democratic nations across the globe. I thus offer 5 recommendations. First, we must acknowledge that the concerns of the citizen-led Block Sidewalk campaign and restart this Keysight development from the RFP phase. Once restarted, this RFP process must involve meaningful and educated consent and decision-making power afforded to disadvantaged communities and marginalized voices, including Indigenous communities who have been mostly left out of this process but have deep connections to the land. This also requires rethinking the consultation process itself because it tends to reproduce unequal power relations. Second, meaningful and educated consent also requires that the city offer digital literacy campaigns, workshops, and resources to ensure that citizens understand the implications of technologies before we consent to them. Third, we need enforceable policy frameworks that prioritize public interest in the digital age before we proceed with any technological urban development. Just as the Canadian broadcasting system is regulated by the CRTC, we need to create policy for publicly protecting things like data, intellectual property, and privacy. Fourth, we need our laws and policies to address and limit the unprecedented and monopolistic power of tech corporations to retroactively compensate for over a decade of leaving the internet unregulated. Just as New York City designed legislation to promote transparency and limit NDAs when Amazon tried to build their headquarters there, we need to create our own legislation to limit corporate secrecy, lobbying, ambiguity, and obfuscation, which have been trademarks with Sidewalk Labs so far in their conduct in Toronto. And finally, we must put critical thinking activists and academics in conversation with programmers, technologists, and policymakers to ensure that our technologies and policies are developed with an equity, inclusion, and diversity lens. I have read the city staff's report on this project and am amazed that there is no room in the budget for an equity lens or equity consultants. And if diversity is our strength, let's be true to our city motto and restart this Keysight development in a meaningfully democratic, equitable, and inclusionary way. Thank you.
Thank you. I apologize. I hadn't started the clock, but you finished right about on what I think is 3 minutes, so thank you very much for that. Are there questions of the deputy? Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Next is John Wilson, West Donlands, Mike York, Carpenters District Council, and Thorben Weiditz. So those are the next three. Good morning. Thank you for being here.
And thank you for welcoming me here. I am John Wilson, one of the co-chairs of the West Donlands Committee. And I am here to offer my support for the recommendations in the report, which is essentially to proceed with an evaluation and consultation process on the MIDP when it is issued and when we receive it, and after Waterfront Toronto has done their part in looking over and evaluating the report, deciding whether, how much, and if they wish to proceed. I think it's important that we remember where we are in this process. We have not yet received the MIDP. We have received a great deal of conversation, if you will, with Waterfront Toronto and with Sidewalk to this point, and we are about to find out what it is that they have distilled from those conversations and from their own competencies and wishes as far as going forward with the project. The West Donlands Committee has not taken a position on whether or not we should proceed. We have not taken a position on whether or not Sidewalk Labs is an appropriate proponent, simply because we have not yet seen the MIDP. We have, however, spent many years as a group of neighborhood organizations, social agencies, business organizations, and environmental organizations in the immediate vicinity of the eastern waterfront. We have been asking Waterfront Toronto to up their game as regard to climate positivity. We've asked them to up their game, and with every proposal would come through, we would say, can we do better on affordable housing? Can we do better on excellence in building design? Can we do better? And we have always been pushing. We've pushed as far as we were able to this point. But at each level, we've been saying, can we not do better? One of the responses that we have now gotten from Waterfront Toronto is, let's see if we can develop the Keysight area of the waterfront with an innovation partner that has competencies in going farther than what we have previously done. And this is something that obviously, and we can't possibly not say that this is something that is of interest to us. It is what we've been asking for all along. We have been doing this since Waterfront Toronto was formed, and before Waterfront Toronto was formed, we've been asking the city to up their game on things like innovative approaches to city building, improving public transit, all matters that have been part of the discussion with Sidewalk Labs to this point. So I urge you at this point to receive the MIDP, to look at what Waterfront Toronto has to do with it, to conduct our own consultation broadly with the project, and to decide at that point whether and if we wish to proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. Are there questions of the Deputy Councillor Fletcher?
Nice to see you today. I was just going to go back to a couple of the kind of foundation things. I know how familiar you are with this and all other waterfront developments, and that the original RFP, and you've called it Keysight, which is the 12 acres, and the project is,
yes.
RFP is for the 12-acre project, and then it got opened up a little bit more in the PDA. But is your assumption that the innovative designs, et cetera, that will be coming forward would be centered on the 12 acres that, or the 11 acres that, 10.5 acres that Waterfront Toronto owns in the Keysight precinct.
I have to admit to not entire clarity, and it's a criticism that I would have of the project at this point. I'm not sure what is going to be confined to Keysight, what would be proposed for, let's say, the broader eastern waterfront, and what would be proposed beyond that. I'm really waiting to see. I mean, frankly, in our discussions and consultations, we talked about parkland animation, issues that we could look across the city to implement, and I want to find out what of the proposals will be doable, if you will, in Keysight, whether they're going to be saying to us some things need a larger footprint, so to speak, and then frankly, it's a matter of negotiation. What do you wish from us? What are we willing to give to you? And we are, mature actors that can make those decisions.
So there's one thing in the scale of some of the innovations that may require a larger area, which is identified in the PDA as well as in the RFP. But then there's the matter of building things on other lands. So would you agree with the Auditor General of Ontario, who said a second agreement with Sidewalk Labs called the Planned Development Agreement signed in July 18 replaces the initial framework agreement and potentially opens the door to expand the Sidewalk Labs project to the approximately 600 acres of land in the Portlands. Waterfront Toronto does not have the authority to grant rights to lands beyond what it owns in Keysight.
Do I agree that Waterfront Toronto does not have a right to do that? Yeah, absolutely, I do.
They do not have the right to grant
They do not.
That would have to be a separate process.
A city discussion. Yes.
And there may be other processes that arrive out of here, other RFPs, because the RFP technically is for building and developing Keysight, not everywhere along the waterfront.
I believe that there are portions of the RFPs that suggest make proposals for beyond the Keysight area, but I'm certain that the city, the province, and the feds will not allow development beyond in areas that they regulate that is beyond the scope of the MIDP.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. And are there any other questions of Mr. Wilson? All right. Seeing none, I'll thank you, Mr. Wilson, very much. And that brings us to Mike York, followed by Thorben Weiditz and Suzanne Kavanaugh from the St. Lawrence Neighborhood Association. Mr. York, good morning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and make a contribution to the discussion. And just on that issue, the Carpenters Union has been building this city since 1882 in Toronto, so I think it's only natural that we're here making another contribution. In fact, actually, this project, we believe, will be an incredible, valuable contribution to our city in an area that's actually rapidly revitalizing. This is a further revitalization. Fantastic project of mixed use, public space, and housing. We see it as a great economic development driver and the opportunity for green jobs. Now, it's probably not unusual for you to hear that Carpenter would be here supporting the project. We look at the mass timber dimension of it as a new technology with an old material. And we see it as huge development around innovation. And in fact, actually, it meshes very well with our own training in mass timber, which we've just recently implemented for our next generation of carpenters. We see this as a potential for driving other developments as well. And we see the opportunity for Canada to become a leader in this particular aspect of the construction industry. Now, as I wanted to make also a couple of reference points. You have my letter before you. So I wanted to point to a couple of issues in that. What we believe this means for Northern Ontario, if we can implement as a part of it mills and a manufacturing component for mass timber. As president of the Carpenters District Council of Ontario, I have the opportunity to travel the province and have seen many communities where the mill has been shut down. I was also recently in Austria and northern Italy doing a tour of mass timber manufacturing. I saw the huge potential that they have developed around sustainable forest practices, integrating the community colleges and colleges within that sector, and also the manufacturing component. It really does bring prosperity to communities. And that's an argument we have been putting forward at every level of government, and I appreciate the opportunity to do so at this level. So we see that in northern communities, whether it's workers, native communities, can also benefit from this. Now, another aspect that I noted was the community benefits agreements. We have some great track records of bringing youth, women, returning Canadian soldiers, and a good example is the Toronto Community Benefits Network that is working with the Eglinton Crosstown, now at West Park Hospital. It wasn't easy to get these implemented, but this is an example of a company, Sidewalk, that's promoting it and initiating the discussions around community benefits. So that's something that's I found unusual, but very, very positive, because when they initiate it, we're there to pick it up, and we're there to work with them in terms of opening the doors of opportunity for many in our community into an exciting project and an exciting construction industry. So with that, I'll close and be happy to field any questions that might come forward.
Thank you, Mr. York. Are there questions of Mr. York this morning? Coming from Councillor Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. York. Has your organization been involved as part of the dialogue and conversation? There has been groups participating and so on. Has your organization been involved in that participation as part of this process?
I mean, with Sidewalk?
Yes.
Yes, I've been involved with that. That's
right.
Correct.
And so I know that you have given us an overview which really would support. Talk about the community benefits, you talk about the timber industry and so on, and it relates to the carpenters because timber is really important to what you do. But as it relates to the report itself, do you think it's prudent for us to actually go through a process in order to evaluate based on evidence before arriving at a decision to throwing this out?
I don't understand the question, so to speak.
So my question was very clear. Well, it was clear to me.
Okay.
My question was simply this. We've had some who basically have said, look, let's just stop this process altogether. Wow. What I'm simply asking is, would it not be more prudent to base the decision of withdrawing from this process on evidence as opposed to just simply throwing it out regardless of any real evidence that suggests otherwise?
No, I think you need the dialogue and you need the evidence before you make a decision. So to me, I mean, the process of engaging, through the community and is exactly what we're doing here, I think that's the important step in the process.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. Are there other questions of Mr. York? All right. Well, thank you very much for your deputation and for your answers. Then the next three again are Thorben Weiditz, Suzanne Kavanaugh, and Julie DiLorenzo. Good morning, sir. 3 minutes are yours. Welcome.
Dear Mayor and members of the committee, my name is Torben Weiditz. I'm a resident of the city of Toronto. I live just north of the site on Parliament Street in Dundas. And I'm here today to speak about the Keysight update report. I'm heartened to see that the city is developing its own framework through which to assess Google's MIDP for the 12-acre Keysight site and possibly for other sites beyond that. To my knowledge, this is only the second time that the public has access to its own elected governments to share some of the input and some of the concerns to an elected body. So in this regard, I think it's a positive step forward to more, democratic accountability. On the other hand, while this is the second time in about 18 months for citizens to speak to their elected body, Google has had plenty of time to speak to staff, to speak to government officials and electeds. A brief look at the lobbyist registers, the city's lobbyist registry shows that they were in touch 1,550 times from March 2018 to May 2019. This makes about 110 opportunities a month, or 27 opportunities a week, or about 5.5 opportunities a day for a very short time period. And they don't even have a development application at the City of Toronto. So they are discussing something that is not even real, whereas everyone else is being told we should relax here and wait until something real is being put forward. So it's a little strange. I've been dealing with this behavior with other companies, being involved with Airbnb, being concerned about Uber, and these big tech companies have brought a completely different ballgame to the city of Toronto, wielding their influence. So I agree very much with previous comments about power asymmetry, lack of transparency, and the lack of a framework. There's a lack of a framework for Uber. When Uber came to town, there was a lack of a framework for Airbnb when it came to town. There's a lack for Google trying to build physical infrastructure that allows them to mine our data on a huge swath of public lands. Coming back to the actual report, there is something in the report that gives me some reason to be concerned, and that is what has been discussed here previously, the notion of scope leap. I have not seen either in the RFP or the PDA any notion of a Google headquarter on the western portion of West Villiers, which is outside of the 12-acre Keysight site. I wonder how this came into the city's Keysight update report, and this is a question I have for staff or you here as our electeds. If you could shed some transparency on how we ended up with a Google headquarter that could possibly be placed on the 12 acres Keysight site because it allows for 3.1 million square feet of, I believe, mixed-use space.
Perhaps you could make. Yeah. I'll have to wrap up there. Yeah. Thank you very much. Are there questions of the deputy, Councillor Fletcher?
Yes. The issue around data has been one that we've been talking about from the very beginning. And what would a data oversight look like, in your opinion, or what would the proper data oversight be outside of this proposal or related to this proposal?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not an expert on data, and I think there are many experts on data and data oversight and data strategies in the room here. So I would defer the answer to this to some of those experts that have spent years and years dealing with these questions, not only in Toronto but around the world. My concern here is really about the leap in scope and providing the largest corporation in the world access to public land and allowing them a way into possibly privatizing municipal services and privatizing the future governance of the city based on the sheer amount of power that they're already wielding in the city of Toronto. They're not even here yet, so to speak. We're just discussing a proposal for a 12-acre site on the waterfront. But I'm just raising concerns about the process and the possibilities around this process and the scope leap to other parts of Toronto's waterfront.
I'll just go back. I've asked a couple of people about the RFP. Is clear the project is the 12 acres, and it's pretty comprehensive in everything you're able to look at.
Right.
Then there's a section that allows other innovative ideas to be applied in other areas, particularly if they're successful in the development of other parts of the waterfront. But I heard you talk about the idea, which I don't know if it's in the MIDP, but it would be that there's an actual development proposal for a headquarters on Villiers Island. And would you think that that probably strays outside of the RFP and the PDA and should be a separate RFP?
Yeah, 100%. And not only that, but I would say that it strays outside of Waterfront Toronto's jurisdictions altogether because it's a city-owned land, and that should be a completely different process.
So you'd agree with the Auditor General when she says you have to do something different if you want to go that far afield with that type of development?
Yes, and I agree with all the recommendations that are in the Auditor General's report, and I have yet to see some action on these recommendations.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Councillor Fletcher. Any other questions? Okay, thanks very much, sir. Next three are Suzanne Kavanaugh, Julie DiLorenzo, and Micha Lasher.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and executive members. Thanks very much. I, too, have submitted a letter, so I'm going to give you the abridged version since I'm now down to 2 minutes and 50 seconds. The first point we wanted to make today is that we support the work plan the city staff have proposed, and we were encouraged that there was an opportunity here to solve the issue around housing affordability and getting us to a climate-positive environment. On the list, I want to make clear that I'm representing the St. Lawrence Neighborhood Association, and we are just north of this proposed site. We regularly work with city staff and residents and developers and property owners to ensure that proposed developments represent good planning and enhance our neighborhood. We view our neighborhood association as active champions. We've been working with the city and with Waterfront Toronto for many years and are always grateful for the support we have had from the city with various projects, including the St. Lawrence Market North Building and getting approval and shovels in the ground this summer. Our neighborhood is adjacent to Keysight, and we have been engaged since it was first introduced to the community in the spring of 2017. We were excited when Waterfront Toronto advised us that this block in the central waterfront was going to be treated differently than in previous precinct plans. We have always seen Waterfront Toronto as a leader with respect to city building and being innovative. This project continues to be that, and more so as we add another layer, that being technology and urbanism, into the land development mix and addressing the questions around housing affordability and moving toward a climate positive environment. From the beginning, our mantra has been, this is an opportunity until it is not. And now we look forward to getting the MIDUP to review and attend upcoming community consultations with Waterfront Toronto and, if successful, community consultations with the City of Toronto. When Sidewalk arrived in Toronto, immediately they asked our neighborhood questions about our mixed-use neighborhood, in particular, the housing mix along the Esplanade. We have been engaged in so many community consultations, some might even say are fatigued. Many of our delegates have attended the 4 roundtable discussions co-hosted by Waterfront Toronto and Sidewalk Toronto. Sidewalk has led focus groups, and Waterfront Toronto has also led many meetings. In fact, Waterfront Toronto has attended the SLNA monthly meetings 3 times, and we've had media follow our discussions and have had Sidewalk attend our Toronto monthly meetings twice. It's been mentioned in various forums that there's not been enough engagement, and we would say that is not true. We have lots of work to do, and we look forward to supporting or to seeing the MIDUP plan and the next steps as Waterfront Toronto and the city will undertake.
That was very good abridged version, 3 minutes and 3 seconds. Thank you very much, Ms. Kavanaugh. Are there questions of the deputy? Councillor Fletcher. And Councillor Nunziato. Okay, Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Fletcher first.
Just this idea of the big data that we've heard, and I've heard from a number of, you're on a stakeholder committee, correct?
Yes, I am.
And that's the Waterfront Toronto Sidewalk Lab Stakeholder Committee?
I think it's just called the Stakeholder Advisory Committee for Waterfront Toronto around Keysight.
Around, so for Keysight?
Yes.
So are you a little concerned that some of these development plans are drifting a little far out of Keysight, 12-acre site?
I want to wait and see the plan to see what details are coming out. For now, there's been lots of conversation, sort of anecdotal, around what is happening.
Well, when Sidewalk Lab shows a map for Keysight and also a development on West Villiers, does that concern you a bit? Because has that been brought up and hashed through at all of your advisory committee?
There's been some discussion around the work around West Villiers and Google headquarters coming in there.
At which committee?
The Stakeholder Advisory Committee.
At your Stakeholder Advisory Committee? And that was Waterfront Toronto allowed that as a conversation, or was that Sidewalk that brought that forward?
I don't think Sidewalk mentioned that, and it was one of our committee members, and it was just a general discussion. Waterfront Toronto did not have any comment on that.
Oh, so that's just an idea, but nothing, your formal conversations have been about your 12-acre site.
Yes.
And Keysight. So I'm asking you if you think that's a bit of a drift from 12 acres over to now a development completely outside of that 12 acres.
I think one of the comments I would make, and that I've said this all along, it's like being like a bird on a wire and watching this process. So going from the RFP to the PDA, then to the MIDUP, it is a work in progress. And so I'm not going to comment on whether or not it would be a mission drift, but rather sort of a work in progress as it's evolving. And I think that where we get to have our say with Waterfront Toronto and the city would be through what the MIDIP looks like.
I don't see in the PDA where it allows that type of development. Do you see that? I'm sure.
No, and that's why we're waiting for the plan.
And so that would concern you if it went so far adrift.
I want to see the plan first before I comment.
I guess, okay. There is an RFP, there is a PDA that designates the scope of the project. I guess I'm asking, as someone who's been involved, does it not concern you that the project may stray so far out? Oh, sorry. Oh my God. Sorry, Joe. So far out of its scope. I didn't see that. Very dramatic moment here.
The chair is straying.
Pardon me?
The chair is straying. Councillor, I think that there's been some changes as we've been going through the discussion and the conversation. So I think that when the plan comes out, that's where we'll be making our comments.
I see. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Fletcher, everything okay over there? I said, is everything okay over there? Just checking. Make sure we don't need to call the medics or anybody like that. All right. Any other questions for Ms. Kavanaugh? I'm sorry, I did have Councillor Nunziata, and now I have Deputy Mayor Barlow as well. Okay.
Yes, I just have one question, and thank you for your deputation. So, as you heard from a number of deputants, there hasn't been any consultation meetings have been held. So you mentioned that there's been a number of them that you've held, and so can you tell us who was involved in those consultation meetings and who attended?
So we've had both Waterfront Toronto and Sidewalk Toronto come to our neighborhood association, where we have around 60, 70 people attend. Then we've also been involved. Waterfront Toronto held a series of focus groups that were physically located at 307 Lakeshore. Sidewalk has also offered, I guess they call it Sunday afternoon drop-in sessions. And I know that there was one in particular on March 2nd where I really wanted to go because they were showing a demonstration of their raincoat outside. And while I was inside visiting the micro unit that they had set up, I was there for about 3 hours, and it was just nonstop people coming in and out. They had done presentations, and I had asked Waterfront Toronto, did you do a count? And they said approximately 800 people. All I know is for the 3 hours that I was there, I just saw one neighbor after another.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nunziata. Deputy Mayor Barlow.
So I think there's two areas that we've heard a lot today: the innovation, the development that is going to happen, but then there's all the data issues. So what kind of conversation has your group had about the data? What kind of conversations and questions have you raised, and what kinds of feedback are you getting? So I think that's 3 questions. Let's start there.
I can give you the answer all combined, if that's all right.
Yep.
So when Waterfront Toronto and Sidewalk has come to our community group, that has been a question. And again, we've had people involved with the civic lab groups that they have had, or the digital lab groups. So we've had people attend that. We've also been paying attention to the DSAP committee. And also, too, I think part of what this has sparked is the discussion around the city getting our policies in place for governance around data. So to me, not to take away from the importance of this, this is absolutely probably one of the most serious things we've ever taken a look at. The world is watching our decision. But it reminds me of similar discussions around what do we do when Uber arrives? What do we do when Airbnb arrives? So if it's not Sidewalk, then it could be something else. So if anything, these groups coming in and doing business in this way is enhancing the conversation or accelerating the conversation that we need to get policies in place.
So, but you've been having the conversations in your group?
Yes.
And you've felt like the city has been present and has been advancing those conversations as well?
I think the city's working on that right now.
So we're working on it right now, and do you feel like we have the tools to evaluate this proposal in that area?
Not yet.
Okay.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Barlow. Did I have other people wishing to ask questions of this deputant? Okay. Then I'll thank you very much, Ms. Kavanaugh, for your deputation and your answers this morning. And we move next three, Julie DiLorenzo next, Micha Lasher, and then Sunil Sharma.
Thank you. Should I begin?
Yes, you certainly may. Thank you. 3 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Julie DiLorenzo. I'm a resident city builder and business leader in Toronto for 35 years. As you probably know, I was the chair of the Investment and Real Estate Committee of Waterfront Toronto during the fall of 2017, when I was presented with the framework agreement with barely 4 business days to review the very sophisticated and complex agreement. The framework agreement is the agreement created to document the relationship as between Waterfront Toronto and Sidewalk Labs. You probably already know that I voted in dissent. That the chair of the Investment and Real Estate Committee dissented on an investment and real estate property project is extraordinary. But what you probably don't know and should know is that 2 board members did not vote and 1 abstained. Unfortunately, I also need to continuously correct the record about meetings by my committee about the framework agreement. In the Ethics Committee presentation, Mr. Doctoroff, he apparently is aware that there were 6 meetings of my committee before the vote, but he also would know that those meetings were not about the actual framework agreement, since he knows exactly when the board received it, 0 business days before they were asked to vote on it. Yet that very agreement with 0 business days to review by the board before the vote gave Sidewalk a runway of 9 months. This is surely not a prudent way to start a relationship. No one should be celebrating the precedents that governance travesty represents. Some people say we are past that. Technically, the PDA, 9 months, superseded the framework agreement on July 31st, 2018. A very special note, though, as Ms. Meg Davis said at the Ethics Committee, we probably should have done a different agreement right at the beginning. But the 2 CEOs, within 2 weeks of the vote, had a joint op-ed in the face of egregious governance. So when the Board of Trade endorses this transaction on behalf of all the business people they represent, they endorse this process I described because you cannot separate the process from the product. Governance matters in a civil society and should matter to democratically elected government. The goal does not justify the means. I hope by now everyone is familiar with the ledger on this relationship. We have 15 years of exemplary reputation at Waterfront Toronto, precedent-setting innovation and environmental initiatives, successful business relationship with some of the best builders in the world. The economic development numbers Sidewalk is so fond of quoting are amazingly similar to the economic development numbers of Waterfront Toronto used before and without the proponent. Waterfront Toronto has $1.2 billion of money to reclaim invaluable land and a site worth in excess of $500 million called Keysight, and the responsibility on behalf of democratically elected government and residents for the designated waterfront area, some of the most valuable lands in North America. On the proponent side of the ledger, we have a $50 million investment without transparency. It is frankly embarrassing. I'll skip because there is my written submission. Now, for all the world to see, we have a completely new precedence for doing business, set up not by democratically elected government at the behest of the residents, but with new rules created by a limited liability corporation created in 2015. That new precedence includes not submitting even 1 official application to the City of Toronto with the required reports and background work. The precedence that we now have is that without filing any real architectural drawings with dimensions, you still get access to unlimited visits to planners, public works, city departments, staff, and councillors, 18 months worth.
All right, I'll have to ask you to wrap up there.
I will. I'll actually quote from city documents. To ensure the city's interests are met and to appropriately assess the merits and technical aspects of the proposal, the city requires submissions of a number of information items. None of those have been submitted. This authority provides a process that examines the design and technical aspects of the proposed development to ensure it is attractive and compatible. None of those submissions have been made.
Okay, we'll stop right there. Thank you very much. So, are there questions of the deputy? We'll start with Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you. I don't think anybody, you're not on the Waterfront Toronto Board, but
No,
you...
not any longer I was.
and
I was
don't
very
think
proud
there-
to be.
I don't think there is anybody here from Waterfront Toronto. But I'm just going to ask you, from when you were a board member and that RFP was developed, because you were there, your consideration was that it's the 12 acres plus any ideas that might be interesting could be established in other locations, but innovations, not plopping buildings all around.
Words matter. The committee.
Pardon me?
Words matter, and that the committee that was responsible for this is called the Keysight Committee.
It's called the Keysight Committee, and the...
It has since changed its name, but when it first came to deal with the business, it was called the Keysight Committee.
And what did it change its name to?
At my request, it changed its name back to the Investment and Real Estate Committee.
Oh, I see. There was the Keysight Committee, but the
There was a
email the project as it's described in the RFP, it's called the project. It's very clearly in my mind, and I'm asking you because you're familiar with this, that's the 12 acres, of which Waterfront Toronto owns, I think, 10.5, and there's another one.
In my opinion, the majority of the discussion was always around the 12 acres.
And if it's drifting out to be about 600 acres in the Portlands, does that concern you in some way?
Yes, it does concern me.
Do you think that was in the jurisdiction of the RFP or the PDA, or I don't know what in the framework agreement because there's an NDA?
In response to your question, may I quote something from the PDA?
From the PDA?
Oh, sorry, may I quote something from the RFP?
Yes, please.
Thank you. No guarantee of volume of work or exclusivity of contract. Waterfront Toronto makes no guarantee of the value or volume of work to be assigned to the successful proponent. The agreement to be negotiated with the selected proponent will not be an exclusive contract for the provision of the described partner scope and deliverables. Waterfront Toronto may contract with others for the goods and services the same as or similar to the partner scope and deliverables, or may obtain such goods and services internally. This is from the RFP.
That's right from the RFP.
That's correct, ma'am.
And so you're pretty clear that there's a certain scope in the RFP that, would you assume that that would be reflected in any written agreement?
Yes, I think what this also says something that has not occurred is that there would have been potentially multiple persons who are successful proponents.
But given that, in your experience, once there's an RFP, how much flexibility is there in an RFP, just from in your business practice, in your business world?
I think that we haven't yet started to discuss the implications on the Competition Act. I think that that's premature at this time for me to respond.
I see. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Are there others wishing to ask questions of this deputy? Okay, thanks, Ms. Di Lorenzo. Thank you very much. Micha Lasher.
Good morning, Your Worship, Deputy Mayors, and Councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to appear today. My name is Micah Lasher. I am the Head of Policy and Communications at Sidewalk Labs. I want to start off by thanking City staff for their report and for their recommendations to Executive Committee and City Council. We believe that today marks a new stage in our ongoing engagement with Torontonians and the City of Toronto. The draft Master Innovation and Development Plan that we will submit to Waterfront Toronto in the coming weeks is the product of 18 months of extensive consultation with more than 21,000 Torontonians in a wide array of forums, from large public roundtables to small expert advisory panels to one-on-one interactions at our headquarters at 307 Lakeshore Boulevard East. What our plan aspires to be is a blueprint for solving challenges facing cities around the world and to pioneer those solutions together with you here in Toronto. They are challenges laid out by the Waterfront Toronto RFP, and they are challenges Torontonians know well. Housing increasingly unaffordable and out of reach, traffic congestion that takes valuable time away from family and work, fallout from years of inattention to carbon emissions, and a rapidly changing economy and workforce. That draft plan will go into great detail about how we propose to achieve Waterfront Toronto's priority outcomes. It will include detailed plans for Keysight. It will include a proposal for a new Google headquarters on Villiers Island, which we believe can serve as a major economic anchor for the city and which we see as entirely consistent with the catalytic use described in the Villiers Island Precinct Plan. It will also propose a process by which Sidewalk Labs, as it proves itself over time, the ideas pioneered at Keysight can be brought to scale across the eastern waterfront to have a bigger impact for Toronto, from creating a path to the largest climate-positive neighborhood in North America to the creation of tens of thousands of jobs and thousands of units of affordable housing. We will do all of this with an array of local partners. The plan will spell out our business model and transactional proposals, and will do so with a level of specificity and transparency that is, I believe, unusual for a private company. I recognize that there have been many questions about these issues. We haven't always had clear answers because our plans were still in formation. The draft Master Innovation and Development Plan will, I hope, clear up much of the confusion and debunk the myths that surround our plans, some of which you have heard today. At the same time, the submission of our plan will not be the end of the conversation, far from it. The plan is still a draft. It will be subject to further revision and negotiation as Waterfront Toronto and the city solicit feedback from the public and an array of stakeholders. That process is captured by the staff report before you today. We welcome and look forward to that process of revision and improvement, which we believe will make a final plan stronger. Thank you for your time. I welcome any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions starting with Councillor Cressy and then Councillor Fletcher. I have those two to start.
Thank you. And so the draft MIDP, the draft plan, will be presented. When do you anticipate that plan coming forward?
In the weeks ahead.
So sometime in June, is that fair?
I would expect so, yes.
All right. So following the release of that plan, it will be going to Waterfront Toronto for their consultations, as well as coming to the city and the other levels of government?
We would welcome whatever processes any order of government saw fit to apply.
Okay. So the processes for the review of that plan, as you understand it, will be up to the government?
Absolutely.
All right. I just have a couple questions related to data, digital governance, and privacy. The city is currently undertaking its process to come up with its policy framework and governance model, looking at data, digital, and smart cities. Is Sidewalk Labs committed to follow to a letter the plan that the City of Toronto comes up with?
Absolutely.
Okay. Those are my questions.
Thanks, Councillor Cressy. Councillor Fletcher.
I'm just wondering, you are aware that a business implementation plan for Villiers Island is still to be submitted from Waterfront Toronto to the city?
Certainly, Councillor.
And that isn't the same as the MIDP? We're clear on that?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
It's not the same document as the MIDP?
Yes.
And can you just point to me somewhere in all of the RFP or the PDA, and I don't have the framework agreement because it's secret, where you have the authority to actually develop a site outside of the 12 acres?
Sure. Well, first of all, I would just encourage you, if you go to the sidewalktoronto.ca, you can find the framework agreement, just for your reference.
Oh.
On page 6 of the RFP, it says, quote, "It may be beneficial to advance the solutions, processes, and partnerships proven successful through the project to subsequent developments on the eastern waterfront as those lands become available." On page 15, the RFP says, quote, that the selected partner would, quote, "contribute appropriate financial resources and/or solution components to support building and district-level solutions for the eastern waterfront." On page 16 of the RFP, it says, quote, "The selected partner would, quote, assist in developing a viable and implementable model for sustainable transit along the eastern waterfront into the portlands that can be supported by a combination of government and private sector funding."
Thank you. The Auditor General was very clear in her report on page 2, actually, of Waterfront Toronto, that, and I read it earlier, that there is the approximate, Waterfront Toronto does not have the authority to grant rights to lands beyond what it owns in Keysight. Are you aware of that, a report from the Auditor General of Ontario?
Absolutely. I think we're certainly cognizant that the ownership rights that Waterfront Toronto has to the Keysight are to Keysight lands, that much of the land in the balance of the Portlands is city-owned, and that is not, Waterfront Toronto does not have rights to grant those lands. However, we are also cognizant of the role that Waterfront Toronto plays in the planning and disposition of those lands under its 2006 Memorandum of Understanding with the city.
So you're banking on that then? Okay.
No,
and
no.
just as an aside, should that...
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it was an editorial comment. Yeah.
Oh, I thought he'd finished the question.
Well, I thought he had actually,
Yeah.
but I think yes.
I would just say no. We're not banking on anything. We expect that there would be that we would work. We would aspire to have the city consider whatever plan we table, and obviously the city may
He is
determine.
answering the question now, and I will allow you time to ask one more question if that's what you're concerned about. But please don't interrupt him.
Sorry, I thought he was finished.
You were winding him up when he was winding himself up.
I was winding him up.
Didn't need your help.
Sorry about that.
Thank you very much.
No,
now you can wind up, please, that answer, and then we'll have one more question. Yeah.
I would say two things. First of all, we're going to put forth the best plan we can, and it reflects all the work we've done, and it will implicate city-owned lands in different ways, and it will certainly be up to you to decide if that plan should go forward, and you may decide that it should not. So I think that we're not banking on anything. We're doing our earnest best.
That was an aside to myself, but the microphone was on. Sorry about that.
This will be your last.
My last question is, should that not work out? I mean, that's a big if for that particular development. Would you ever consider the East Harbor, which is zoned basically for the nature of that business, like at headquarters, there's transit, there's smart track there. It would be a perfect opportunity. Have you had any of those discussions, or?
I have to confess, we have poured our heart into the last 18 months into a planning process centered at Keysight. We've engaged in a vibrant back and forth with Torontonians, and as I said, you may ultimately choose if that's not the plan you want to move forward with, but we have not, in a meaningful way, started thinking about Plan B.
All right, thank you. And we have Councillor Carroll next to ask some questions.
I'm not going to get into the deep dive, because there are certainly members here that are far more immersed in it. I just have one overarching question. We have one big problem in Toronto. It's in our tech sector. It's in every sector. While we're attracting FDI, while we're attracting people like yourself, we still have a huge generation of people who are engaged in the most exciting technology of the future sort of sector development, and all doing precarious work under contracts. What will be your policy if you set up business here in Toronto in this much larger way than you are already here, with regards to long-term employment, pensioning employees, and really laying down roots for living wages and good employment?
I think we have at this point, I think, about 25 full-time employees in Toronto, in our headquarters at 307 Lakeshore. And I should emphasize, by the way, I will directly answer your question in a minute, but I just want to divert for 1 second, which is that expense of those employees and the entire expense of our planning process was entirely at risk. The RFP that we won was simply the opportunity to make a plan, which, as I mentioned earlier, may ultimately be rejected. So I wanted to mention that. But we have, as I said, about 25 employees at our headquarters at 307 Lakeshore. I think we are a pretty good employer. We are certainly not a gig employer, and I would expect that would continue with any employees that we would have across the project as it scales. I would also say that we anticipate the vast majority of the technology that is deployed in this project, the vast majority of businesses that are part of it, that set up shop there, to be not ours. We want to create the conditions for a vibrant array of businesses and partners to set up shop, and we will propose, I think, in the minute, an array of workforce development approaches. But in general, I think we would be eager at the opportunity to work with you to come up with innovative pilots around very positive approaches to workforce policy in the project.
And pensions? That's the one word we didn't cover, pension?
Sure. I think, I guess, is your question, would we provide a...
Well, this is a nation that's really built on people having pensions. Yeah. It doesn't work any other way. Will there be pensions in your company in Canada?
I think I would venture to say that I think we would exceed the benefits provided by most private sector employees in Toronto. I can't speak to the details of that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Carroll. There's Councillor Bradford.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. And Micah, thanks for coming in today. A couple of questions. We've heard comments from deputants this morning, concerns about foreign entities, you guys coming in. So 2 questions there. Why Toronto, and how are we going to, as Mr. Basili alluded to, there's many Canadian and Toronto-based tech companies. How are we going to provide opportunities for them to be a part of this and work on the project as well?
Why Toronto? There were any number of reasons why Toronto. We were excited by the prospect of working with a far-sighted, progressive entity like Waterfront Toronto that was designed for the purpose of creating intergovernmental alignment and taking an outcomes-based approach to revitalization on the waterfront. That is highly unusual. We were generally excited by the spirit of the city to try new things and to do so with a commitment to inclusion and to think about what kind of future we're building in cities generally. And we thought that this was an opportunity in an area to consider not just digital technology, but the built form, approaches to affordable housing, infrastructure, which are many things that we were formed to think about. We're not a smart city device company. So that's the why Toronto.
So we have a deep bench of tech talent here in Toronto, though. And what sort of opportunities are there going to be to work together, to collaborate, to introduce some of those technologies and work with those companies if you guys were moving forward with this project?
You know, I was told yesterday that our draft plan, somebody went through it and counted, and it contemplates 450 individual technological interventions. And I imagine that we would provide less than 10 of those. Okay. And so I think that there will be an enormous opportunity for Canadian-based and Toronto-based tech companies to come and bring this place to life. That's what we want to create here. And that's true in the tech world, that's true in the real estate world. We want to create the conditions upon which others can build so that this can be consistent with what many here have fought for many years, a waterfront for everybody.
So next question, watching the clock. I thought it was really interesting that you guys spent a year doing this residence reference panel. One of my constituents actually participated in that. I sat down and had a long discussion with her about the process and how that worked. I have since read the report. Very fascinating, and I think a lot of good takeaways in there for you guys. I'm curious as to how you're responding to some of the feedback from the minority report that you did include at the back, and how that's informing the MDIP and your proposals going forward.
I don't have the residence reference report in front of me, so I would strain, I think, a bit to be specific. But what I will tell you is that what you will see, I think, in the draft Master Innovation and Development Plan is an enormous amount of attention paid to the feedback we've gotten in a variety of forms and pretty explicitly addressing how that's shaped the proposal. I would say, just in general, even some of the discussion that we've had here today, which is quite consistent with feedback we've heard about needing to make sure that there are an array of that we are not doing it all, has led us, I think, in many ways to scale back what may have been some of our earlier concepts and approach. And I think you'll see that reflected in myriad ways in the draft plan.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Are there other questions from members of the committee or others visiting? Okay. Oh, Councillor Ainsley, please.
Can you share with the...
Sorry, I thought Councillor Ainsley first.
Okay,
oh, I didn't. Fine and dandy. I didn't see Deputy Mayor Barlow's hand, so we'll start with the Deputy Mayor then, and we'll start with, she'd started, so we'll start with her, and then we'll have you next. Go ahead. Yep.
What's your mandate?
I'm sorry.
What's your mandate?
Our mandate
Yeah.
is to explore ways that technology and urban design can improve life in cities.
Okay. Technology. And so we've talked a lot about this data thing. So, you know, urban design, I think we're very familiar with it. We're always evaluating that. So you are a technological company, you have lots of experience in technology. Do we as a city have the infrastructure in place to evaluate this proposal? If you were to advise us, can you take your sidewalk,
Sure.
advise us?
And I should say, by the way, that while many of my colleagues are technologists, my background is in government and in city government in my city in New York, and I've been.
But I'm sure you guys had this conversation.
Honored to be here today. I think I wouldn't presume to tell you whether or not you have the existing capacity to evaluate the plan, but I would say that I think that a proposal that is before you today that very much contemplates creating resources to evaluate what is going to be a complex and lengthy plan seems like a wise thing to do and is consistent with the work that Councillor Cressy has already initiated around the data issues.
So will your agreement basically say point blank that whatever policy we come up with the smart cities, you will be obliging by that?
We will operate under whatever the rules set by governments are.
Will the agreement say that?
will the agreement, an ultimate agreement that we would form? Yes, sure. I mean,
So whatever the policy we create on smart cities, your company is willing to respond to that.
yes. I think that in general, I would just say, I would say the following, which is that in general, depending on how long this process goes, there will be an extensive negotiation, I would imagine, with Waterfront Toronto and the city on an array of issues of terms, and it may well be that we may not be able to come to terms. And if you were to put in place as part of your rules on smart cities that no American company may deploy technology in Toronto, then we won't abide by that and we won't do the project. But yes, we'll follow the rules of the roads.
All right, Councillor Ainsley is next.
Thank you. Through the mayor, I wanted to ask a bit about this evolving digital trust.
Sure.
And there's been comments about urban data and sub-data sets. Is Sidewalk Labs committed to put any and all data that's collected into the trust?
We have committed to put any and all data that is collected in the physical environment into the trust, which is considered urban data.
Okay.
But if you were to do business with us, we're not in the business of selling things, but if tomorrow we came up with a really clever hat and we were selling it online, and you made the choice to go online and give us your credit card information and buy a hat from us, we are not committing to put that information into the Urban Data Trust.
Okay, which also leads to a related question around commercialization of technology, and how do you see that rolling out in a similar manner?
Well, I should say that we've made a commitment which we would, I don't think, expect the other companies. It's interesting, I should just note that there are things that we've proposed to be policies that would sit on top of all existing Canadian privacy laws, and I think that's an important point. There is no suggestion that all of the protections that Torontonians enjoy today under existing Canadian privacy laws, there's no suggestion that they would not enjoy them at Keysight. Quite the contrary, we are proposing a layer of protection to sit on top of that. That is something that we propose would apply to everybody involved in this project. There are also some unilateral commitments that we've made, and one of them is to not sell personal information for advertising purposes. And I think I won't get into the debate of whether we are or are not Google, but I will say that in that respect, our business model is quite different.
Okay, and the same with around the guarantee you're looking after, because there's other examples around the world of Google subsidiaries that were collecting data. They had agreements with municipalities, and Google shut them down or just absorbed them.
I can't speak to those examples, but happy to talk about, to look at materials. Obviously, our hope is that we will be a going concern for many years to come. And I think different perhaps than maybe any other alphabet company, what we're proposing is a business that is going to be physically anchored in a place. So I recognize there's a concern that somehow this American company is going to come in, make a grab, and run. But if you decide to proceed with this, we will be here for decades to come. Our employment base will grow, the technologies will be here, the revenues that we will be creating, at least a meaningful chunk of them, will be here. It was said earlier, one of the deputants earlier characterized us as a company willing to, quote, bleed money into Toronto and make it back other places. I will tell you candidly, that is not our aspiration. It is not our aspiration to bleed money. But it would seem to me that if I were a city councillor, I might look favorably on a company that was prepared to bleed money into my city and make it back other places.
All right, Councillor Ainsley, thank you. Are there any other questions of this deputant? Okay, well then, thank you very much for your patience in answering questions and for your deputation. The next, last two, because I hadn't mentioned the final one. Sunil Sharma is next, and then Dr. Siobhan O'Flynn. May I just say, I have no idea what you're going to say because I didn't know you were coming today. It was just an add-on to the list. I want to make sure in front of the Executive Committee I acknowledge that Mr. Sharma was one of the people, I would say the principal person responsible for Collision coming to Toronto, which was of immense benefit to our city in many different respects, and I want to just say thank you to you publicly in front of the Executive Committee of the city. Now you'll say your deputation, I may regret that, but whatever it may. I'm just sitting here listening, so, but you're most welcome here today, and you have the same 3 minutes as everybody else, notwithstanding that you brought Collision here.
Perfect. Okay, thank you, Your Worship, Deputy Mayor, members of City Council. So as the Mayor said, my name is Sunil Sharma. I'm the Managing Director of TechStars. TechStars is the worldwide network that helps entrepreneurs succeed. It's a tech accelerator. We operate 50 across the world, including 2 thriving TechStars accelerators right here in Toronto. I'm also the director of a pre-accelerator based in Silicon Valley called Founder Institute, which we've been running here in Toronto for 3 years, and have created 140 new startups, 45 of them led by women CEOs and 90% by immigrant founders. And as the Mayor just said, I'm the co-host of the Collision Conference, which just happened a couple of weeks ago here in Toronto. More than 26,000 people came to this city, journalists, tech CEOs, investors, entrepreneurs, to see what this city has happening in this vibrant tech ecosystem. And one of the keynote speakers was actually Dan Doctoroff, the CEO of Sidewalk Labs, and he had a rousing reception on a keynote stage. So the arrival of these 3 organizations, I think, is a very positive signal to what we have happening in Toronto as we've emerged as truly one of the world's tech powerhouse and thought-leading cities and surging tech economies. This city has created more tech jobs in the last few years than any city in North America, and that includes Silicon Valley, New York, and Boston. What's also happened, in addition to the arrival of these great jobs, is the arrival of world-class tech companies from across the world. Companies like Silicon Valley Bank, WeWork, Pinterest, we have Tencent, Postmates has just announced an incredible new launch, Paytm. These are some of the most valuable and most progressive tech companies, and they've chosen to establish themselves in this city and subsequently have created a tremendous number of jobs. And not only have they arrived here, but they've in fact thrived in Toronto. WeWork, for example, has indicated that this city is its most relevant and fastest growing market anywhere in the world. And the investment dollars and the job creation is commensurate with that position. Now, there's a word that we really didn't hear a lot today. In fact, I don't think that word was uttered once, the word is startups. This city is teeming with startups. And what excites me most about the potential of Sidewalk and its arrival here is the opportunity of our startup companies to engage directly with the innovation and the thought leadership and the ability to test pilot and advance their technologies with one of these world-class test beds. I think of it as though we will have home field advantage for our innovation ecosystem. So Sidewalk is another example of the emergence of Toronto, and we have a tremendous number of startups here that are disrupting in areas like mobility, in transportation, in smart buildings, in sensors, and we've invested in many of them at TechStars. And I'll close by saying that my own colleagues all across the world that run TechStars often in industry verticals like in smart home or transportation or in sensors are aware not only of Toronto but of the pending arrival of Sidewalk. They're going to be sending their own startups here, and I think we have a very good potential to keep them here once they arrive.
I was going to have to cut you off, and I was going to say you got the 30-second collision bonus, but it's a one-time bonus only.
I appreciate that.
Even though collision is coming back next year.
It certainly is.
All right. Are there questions of the deputy? Pardon me? It's coming for 2 more years. I know. I only take things 1 year at a time, but having said that, they have a 3-year deal. You're right.
3-year deal.
Are there questions of the deputy? No questions? All right. Again, thank you very much. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor. Yeah.
Sorry, it seems like you have a key role in our tech sector in here. Have you been involved in developing this smart city policy? Has the city invited you to come to the table and help us doing?
No, I haven't been involved. I've just been observing the development of the plan. I've been reading the same media that everyone else has, both sides of the arguments. I just have a position that overall this is a net benefit for the city's economy, and it's another signal for the arrival of Toronto on the global tech scene.
Okay. Would you be willing to help us set up that framework and that policy?
Yeah, absolutely, I would be.
Other questions of Mr. Sharma? Thanks very much for being here today. Much appreciated. And last but certainly not least, Dr. Siobhan O'Flynn.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today. So what I'll speak to you about is a small segment of a larger academic study examining how big tech and entertainment conglomerates are handling children's data. And my paper on big data, Disney, and the future of children's entertainment was published yesterday. So to clarify, to speak to Councillor Fletcher's question, in Canada and the US, children under 13 are deemed to be minors and cannot give consent, hence terms of use requiring parental consent on most websites. in the EU with the enforcing of the General Data Protection Regulation in May 2018. All but 2 countries raised the age of consent to 16. The Office of the Privacy Commissioner of Canada recognizes children as vulnerable and deserving of special considerations. They cannot make informed decisions as to what they are agreeing to. We do not have adequate legislation in Canada to regulate today's data collection practices, particularly in the context of minors, where the generation of pseudonymized consumer profiles via cross-browser fingerprinting and other methods produces robust and persistent consumer profiles. So my findings on Alphabet subsidiary companies are alarming and well documented internationally and raise serious questions as to whether we can trust a big tech company to self-regulate. Alphabet subsidiary companies, Google, YouTube, and Google Play, have an established pattern of violating children's data privacy due to variously, broadly, an over-reliance on AI to serve ads and content recommendations, a lack of human oversight on app developer practices in the Google Play Store, a lack of human oversight on YouTube resulting in pedophile comments and activity on child-posted videos documented in major media coverage in 2017 and again in 2019. An overreach as to data collection of minors and teens via Google Chromebooks introduced in American schools in 2017, whereby account holders had to opt out of data collection. Let me detail one instance further. A 2018 academic study found that thousands of Android apps potentially violated COPPA in the US, revealing that roughly 57% of the 5,855 child-directed apps appeared to be in violation of COPPA. So the consistent documented pattern across Alphabet's companies is a failure to enforce secure data privacy for children under 13 until an external organization calls attentions to violations. So why is this important for Keysight? Sidewalk Labs is a sister company to 3 of Alphabet's subsidiaries, all of whom have failed to meet compliance requirements more than once. So as John Thackera stated, trust is not an algorithm. Can we trust in companies who trust in algorithms based on existing documentation? We should assume that we cannot. Thank you. I'm over time.
Thank you very much. Are there questions of the deputy? Councillor Fletcher.
That 13, I'm sorry, could you just explain that one more time? Because I heard what you said, but the answer I got earlier was there wasn't any requirement or any stipulation for any age to have to give consent to any data collection.
Right. So what we have in Canada is not as rigorous as is enforced in the U.S. and is now sort of more rigorously reinforced in the EU. What we have on the statement as to children's data privacy on the website of the Office of the Privacy Commissioner is that children are to be accorded special protections because they're a vulnerable group. So the standard or common age of consent is 13 and up, and you see this on Instagram, on Facebook, on various other social media platforms, and so the kind of de facto setting is 13. But what happens, of course, and this is going to be a major concern in the context of urban data or public data, is that there appears to be no way to distinguish between the data of minors and the data of adults. All of that will be scooped, and again, based on precedent and based on the business model of the web, where data is the new plutonium, there is no guarantee that the data of minors will receive secure privacy protection.
Thank you. And Councillor Bailao asked the previous deputant, first of all, I'll ask you, are you on the city's digital advisory group currently?
No.
And given your perspective, particularly around children and vulnerable, would you be willing to put your name forward?
Oh, absolutely.
For that?
Yep.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Other members of council wishing to ask questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, I'll thank you very much. So it is 12:19. we could get a couple of questions of staff in, I suppose, but I do want to have the lunch break at 12:30 for an hour, and so I think maybe we could just take the first round of a couple of people, because it's 12:19, it's 10 minutes, we'll use it. So are there questions of staff, starting with Councillor Crutchy? Okay. Cressy, that is.
We'll just thank you. I'll begin by directing my questions to David Stonehouse from the Waterfront Secretariat. When do you anticipate receiving the draft MIDP, the draft plan? I think that mic needs to be turned on. Sorry. So sometime this month, perhaps early July. Okay. Once that plan is received and goes public, the stages of review, and the report in front of us goes into the city review, which I'll come back to. So it first goes to Waterfront Toronto, is that correct?
That's correct.
And what is their process for review?
So through the mayor, they will host a series of public and stakeholder meetings through the summer and into the fall. And then at that point, they will evaluate what they've heard. They will prepare a report for their board to consider and for their board committee to consider for a Waterfront Toronto board decision in either December of 2019 or early 2020.
Okay. So the draft plan comes forward, and sometime in the next few weeks, Waterfront Toronto public consultations and board consideration for a decision by them in late 2019, perhaps early 2020. At what point does the city initiate its review, as per the report in front of us?
So we would initiate our review immediately. However, there would be a public phase in terms of stakeholder and public consultation that would begin after the Waterfront Toronto Board has made a decision. And that consultation would be on the MIDP itself, but also on the Waterfront Toronto Board decision.
Okay. So the City of Toronto, through the staff level, you will begin your own assessment of the MIDP as soon as it goes public, but the public consultations on that and the report back to Executive and Council will come in early 2020. Is that right?
That's correct. And we've talked in the report about a report sometime in Q2 of 2020.
Okay. On data, digital governance, and smart cities, we have a series of council directions to undertake a set of principles, a policy framework, and a governance model for it. What is the status of that city-developed plan?
Through the chair. Can you hear me now? Oh, thank you. Sorry. Through the chair, there are several pieces or components that are already in progress. Our plan is to report back in Q4 of this year. The way that we're taking it is an iterative approach. As we heard through several deputants, there's several pieces to it, both at the city level, the provincial level, and the federal level. We are engaged in all of those forums, plus in the industry, so we will report back in Q4.
And just my last question with the time then is, you anticipate coming forward with a proposed city digital governance, smart cities, and data framework prior to City Council is asked to consider the overarching Keysight proposal. Is that correct?
We'll, through the chair, we'll bring clarity in that in Q4 because it'll be an iterative approach, so we'll have the latest information there. We'll make sure that we're synchronized so that the necessary information is provided so Council can make an informed decision.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Crutchy. We have time for one more, and I think that person that had their hand up next was actually Councillor Fletcher, and so then we'll pick up afterwards. But Councillor Fletcher, go ahead.
Thank you very much. This is to the city manager. Last year, July 23rd, 2018, before you were the city manager, but Juliana Carboni was acting, and a letter was sent to you, to Waterfront Toronto, actually, by the way, is Waterfront Toronto here today to answer any questions?
To the mayor, I don't see any senior officials, so I don't believe so.
Okay, so I'll have to ask you if this letter that outlines a number of issues. It outlines the digital issue. It also outlines that the city believes the focus should be on the 12-acre site. A number on the other things, the MOU and the role of the parties. There were certain requests. Are you aware, did you ever get a reply back directly or a letter back in any way?
To the mayor, did not receive acknowledgement of receiving the letter or any reply back.
And maybe I'll just ask if Waterfront Secretariat got any reply back to the issues that were outlined, the geographic scope, what the city approvals were, the MOU and the role of the parties, including the business implementation plan, and the just laying out a number of things, wanting it in the PDA. Were those things put in, or did you get an acknowledgement of those requests?
The purpose of the, through the mayor, the purpose of the letter was to provide comment for Waterfront Toronto to build into the plan development agreement. There wasn't a letter back, but to the best of our knowledge, the PDA did address the comments in the letter.
So do you think it, Schedule A should define the project as the Keysight site? Was that accomplished in the PDA from the city's request by the city manager? I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but Waterfront Toronto isn't here to answer whether they did that or not. So,
I think the PDA certainly spoke to the significance of the 12-acre Keysight site, but the geographic scope question is still a question that we have addressed in our current.
that you've
staff
addressed
report.
in your great report. So, just one of the questions. Before I run out of time, two things. There'll be. I'm going to ask for some. Be clear on where the RFPs would have to happen for any further development outside of Keysight, and also ask if there's been any conversations I raised today with the representative from Sidewalk that should that not turn out to be good news story on Villiers Island, if there's been any discussions with them about East Harbor, which is a planned place for headquarters.
Through the mayor, I'll answer the second question first.
Yep.
I'm not aware of any conversations between Waterfront Toronto and the developers of the First Gulf site. That would be a matter between them. And then on the first question, the RFP talks about future process, and it's my understanding that Waterfront Toronto, should it move forward with the MIDP, would be working with its partner, in this case Sidewalk Labs, on further RFPs for developer partners. As to the applicability beyond the 12 acres, we've made it clear in our report that the city's participation would be subject to further procurement.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Fletcher. It's 27 minutes after 12, so I think that's an appropriate time for us to take a lunch break, which will be until 1:30. So we'll resume at 1:30 with questions to staff, and thank you very much.
I'm
good. How about yourself? I think this has actually been quite a balance. I mean, you have all opinions.